We are Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again to this very special broadcast today. Of course, it's International Human Rights Day. Here in South Africa, we're celebrating under the theme Overcoming or Unite Against Racism. That is our theme for today. Of course, we're dealing with International Human Rights Day. I've got a couple of new faces on the show. Some would say long overdue. On my left, I've got Rene West, who will be joining us on the news desk, along with Albie a little bit later today. And then right off the bat, Katimula Uti is going to, well, she's going to do the first news bulletin, the first one in her life here today as well. It should be very interesting. So if you're seeing a little bit of difficulty, please bear with us. It's the first day of many firsts here today. Elvis, it's International Human Rights Day today. Nice, firstly, to change the format of the show a little bit.
And of course, you know, there's nothing better than a facelift, they say. So today, we can see we have some beauties in the studio with us. They call it Beauty and the Beast between you.
Amongst the beasts, of course, Elvis has got his eye off the ball. We're asking you a question still today. Of course, the question is a very important one. It deals with the theme here in South Africa, which is Unite Against Racism. We ask you, what is the most important principle in building a non-racial society? Yes, it's a big, heavy question, but it's also a big, heavy day. International Human Rights Day. We'll build up to a special broadcast that starts at 11 a.m. this morning. Of course, our main event on Human Rights Day is in KwaZulu-Natal, the Moses Mabhida Stadium to be exact. We're going to be there shortly for an update from our team on the ground there as we build up till 11 o'clock when this special event kicks off. But first, a lot of news over the weekend, overnight. Let's get an update from Albie Sachs.
The African National Congress National Executive Committee has reaffirmed its confidence in President Jacob Zuma following the allegations that the Gupta family is influencing cabinet appointments.
Today. U.S. President Barack Obama has described his visit to Havana as a historic opportunity to engage with the Cuban people. Obama is the first sitting American president that has set foot on Cuban soil in 88 years.
Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody that's in studio with us. Really looking forward to the next couple of years working with you all. Good morning to you at home. This is what we've got for you on this auspicious day in sports.
And another one that's perfect.
The Proteas keep the World Cup aspirations alive with a 37-run victory over gutsy Afghanistan.
You are an amazing competitor. You changed our game, and honestly, if it wasn't for you, how hard you work, and seeing you play so well, I wouldn't be as motivated to come back and work so hard. So I want to thank you from the bottom of the heart for the sport.
Victoria Azarenka pays tribute to Serena Williams as she beats the world #1 to take the Indian Wells title.
A 15th win of his Formula One career.
Nico Rosberg wins a dramatic F1 season opener in Melbourne as Fernando Alonso miraculously walks away from an horrific crash.
And then it dug in twice.
That is what we've got for you in the sports. Back now to the main desk to carry on with the show.
Thank you, Kendall. Kendall will be back a little bit later with more, but you have to stay tuned for that. Top story this morning. The African National Congress's National Executive Committee has reaffirmed its confidence in President Jacob Zuma following the allegations that the Gupta family is influencing cabinet appointments. The NEC ended a 3-day meeting in Pretoria last night by rejecting the reports of state capture by the Guptas.
The allegations that the Gupta family influenced appointments of cabinet ministers threatened the stability of the ruling party in the lead up to the NEC meeting. The National Executive Committee resolved to call for those behind the allegations to come forward. This would assist the party to take an appropriate action. Calls for those, including Deputy Finance Minister Mthethwa, to be sacked, rejected as ill-discipline.
Once we have got the information, it can only be that information that determines what action to take. Because running an organization is based on a principle of establishing truth from facts. That is how you run an organization. You try to establish truth from facts. You don't just chase information because it is sensational. It doesn't work that way.
The party will have a follow-up meeting with the Gupta family in the near future. The NEC also reaffirms its confidence in the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. This follows reports of a public spat between him and his Commissioner of SARS, Tom Moyani, as well as the Hawks.
It affirms its full confidence in the Minister of Finance and applauds the work of the President and the Minister to boost confidence in South African economy and attract investments and avoid further downgrades.
The NEC also recommitted the government to address the weak economic growth, including unemployment and high inflation. The need to reduce the high state debt also discussed. Montlengane Dipoku, SABC News, Pretoria.
Mantashe also expressed the NEC's regret at the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Janus Walus. Walus was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of SACP leader Chris Hani.
The NEC regrets the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Janus Walus, the murderer of Chris Hani, and welcomes the decision of the Minister of Justice to take this decision on review. On Human Rights Day, the NEC dedicates this Human Rights Day to the advancement and promotion of non-racial South Africa, and the NEC urges all South Africans to fight racism in all its manifestations and to build unity and cohesion in our country. On Good Friday and Easter weekend, we wish all Christians well over the Easter weekend and safety on their travels to the various church gatherings across the country.
Meanwhile, the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, has responded to the allegations about the Guptas, saying the country cannot be held to ransom by a single family. Now, he was speaking in Durban during meetings between business and political leaders.
We cannot sacrifice our hard-earned democracy and our hard-earned sovereignty because a few people think that they can run our lives. Let us not ever allow that to happen in our country.
Now, President Jacob Zuma will address the main Human Rights Day commemoration at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban later this morning. We now cross live to Blaine Herman, who is at the venue. Blaine, a very good morning to you and welcome. Blaine, are you there?
A very good morning and welcome, of course, to Moses Mabhida Stadium, and that is where the main commemoration rally will be held. We're expecting President Jacob Zuma to deliver an address which will outline what essentially should be the priorities for our nation as we mark this Human Rights Day. Of course, this event taking place against the backdrop of quite a number of incidents that happened earlier this year here in this province. As many people will recall, the incident of Ms. Sparrow which triggered quite a number of things. Well, we hope to hear from President Jacob Zuma, just giving us a sense of from where the government sits, what should be the priorities of our nation, and how should we more specifically tackle this scourge of racism. The Human Rights Commission, together with several other institutions, foundations like the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, throughout this week hosting seminars, conferences and dialogues among South Africans, just discussing how South Africans should approach this particular issue. Very interesting take spoke earlier in the week to some of the people who were part of a discussion that took place in Johannesburg, saying increasingly we're seeing South Africans talking past one another. Is it a sign of the times? Is it frustrations? Or these new things that perhaps we took for granted, never really worked hard to ensure that we deal with this scourge. 22 years into democracy, how come we are seeing the kinds of things that we're seeing? How come we're hearing the kinds of messages that are coming through from fellow South Africans? Well, hopefully President Jacob Zuma will give us a sense as to whether, in fact, how much work has gone into establishing how big this scourge is and what indeed it is that we should be doing, each and every one of us should be doing from our vantage points. Well, the rally is expected to start in an hour's time from now, although looking around, it doesn't look like it will start on time. But yes, this is where President Jacob Zuma will be speaking from and giving us a sense as to what it is really that we should be doing as South Africans excuse me, to combat this scourge of racism. Well, our producer, Dumisho Mashaba, went around and spoke to some South Africans just about the Bill of Rights to get a sense as to whether they understand the Bill of Rights, what it entails, and what it is indeed that is expected of them. Here's what he put together for us.
Human rights in South Africa are protected by the Bill of Rights. They include equality, human dignity, freedom of expression, assembly, demonstration, picket and petition, freedom of association, and freedom of movement and residence. But how many of these rights are South Africans actually aware of?
No, I do not know all the rights. I only know some of the rights which I learned at school from life orientation, like those of the children. That a child has a right to safety, to education, to health, and to safety, all those kind of rights, yeah.
The Bill of Rights, ngiyazi kancane and angisayikhumbuli futhi.
Do you know about the Bill of Rights?
No.
Do you know what's contained within the Bill of Rights?
No.
Uyazi ngeBill of Rights?
Yini?
iBill of Rights yini?
iBill of Rights. Ayichama ngithazela.
Awayazi iBill of Rights?
Angazi ngiyisole current affairs.
Indeed, the road towards accessing and protecting our rights starts with acquiring knowledge of those very rights. Dumiso Mashaba, SABC News.
Well, some South Africans, they're talking about the Bill of Rights. Well, in fact, they do understand it at all. Well, we are expecting thousands of South Africans to gather here to hear the message from President Jacob Zuma as he outlines the key messages, or what should be key messages coming from the government. I mean, organizations like the Human Rights Commission have, of course, done quite a lot of work. Remember, earlier in the week, speaking to a researcher from the Human Rights Commission, was saying they do have literally hundreds of complaints that have been lodged with the Commission by South Africans who believe that people's human rights are being trampled on. Of course, the duty of the Human Rights Commission is to investigate each and every complaint that gets lodged with them, and thereafter, of course, take a decision as to whether indeed someone's rights would have been trampled on. Well, do join us a little later. That's when we'll be coming to you live from here, the Moses Mabhida Stadium, where President Jacob Zuma is expected to give that key Human Rights Day message from the government. That's a little later on. Supposed to start in about an hour's time from now, but of course, judging by the empty seats, it doesn't look like it's going to start any time soon. But we will be here bringing you that live. For now, though, it's back to you in the studio in Johannesburg.
William Voko, thank you so much for that update, and we'll cross to you live a little bit later as soon as that event takes off. And we have two reporters there, William Voko as well as Blaine Herman. We crossed to Blaine a little bit earlier. It seems like we missed him. He'll probably update us a little bit later as to what is happening there. But today is Human Rights Day, and we're asking you a very important question. That question relates to human rights. And do you know your human rights? And what does it take for us to build a society, a non-racial society in South Africa? I would like to find out from you. You can let us know what's on your mind on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. But to discuss this even further, we're going over there to Yemen to find out more.
Thank you very much, Elvis. A very good morning if you've just joined us here on Newsroom on SABC News. Now, of course, it's Human Rights Day, and earlier this year, President Jacob Zuma announced that Human Rights Day, this one, will be celebrated under a special theme called United Against Racism. This, of course, in light of the recent incidents of racism that have been making the rounds on social media here in South Africa. It's actually been going on for, between 3 and 6 months. Now, from the Human Rights Commission, we are joined in studio by Faraz Mohammed, who is a senior researcher for equality at the South African Human Rights Commission. Faraz, thank you for joining us and a very good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
United Against Racism, that's the call from the President on this day today. It's a tough question, but it's something that I think it's on everyone's minds constantly in South Africa. We see these incidents that are highlighted in the media and so forth. At the Human Rights Commission, though, do you see an increase in incidents of racism generally across the races in South Africa? Or are these isolated incidents that we are simply highlighting in the social media age, if we can call it that?
So I think that there's two answers to that question. The one is, yes, we have seen a significant increase when it comes to complaints in general. We've also seen significant increases in complaints based on race-related discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
But I would question whether or not that's actually necessarily a bad thing, because obviously we want people to be more aware of their rights. We want people to be more aware of access to redress when their rights are violated. So if somebody is bringing a complaint to the Human Rights Commission, it does, at the very least, signify that somebody is aware of their human rights.
At the Human Rights Commission, how are you getting your heads around it in the social media age where everyone now has a voice and everyone has a platform? Even more importantly, do people feel that freedom to express racial bias, if one could call it that, do they feel that freedom more so today?
I think it's a very difficult question because the internet and social media is not very easy to regulate. So I think that there's been a significant amount of attention paid to race-related tensions on social media. It's something that we need to continue to talk about and something that we need to find a way to regulate that's actually not going to limit people's freedom of expression to an extent that is unreasonable. And I don't think that as a country, I don't think we've gotten there yet.
Now, of course, the President called for today to have special significance. Yes, it's Human Rights Day, International Human Rights Day, it's that, but here in South Africa we celebrate United Against Racism. How does the Human Rights Commission view this kind of call and this kind of day?
So I think that viewers will know that a week ago, South African Human Rights Commission hosted a national conference on racism, along with the Anti-Racism Network of South Africa. The Commission, along with civil society bodies, I think we're all aware that there needs to be more attention paid to this issue and that there needs to be more room for dialogue and conversation about how we can actually move the conversation forward.
Now, as the Human Rights Commission, of course, 20 years, you're celebrating the existence of the Commission. Former President Thabo Mbeki, he recommended a national dialogue around the issue of racism just a couple of weeks ago on issues of race and racism. At the Human Rights Commission, do you agree with that sentiment?
I think there's definitely a need for more conversation, more dialogue around how we can actually tackle this problem. It's clear that racism is still as significant a problem as it was 20 years ago. So how do we actually engage with some of the institutional factors, some of the structural and economic factors that are contributing to the perpetuation of this problem? And I think that, the dialogue would be an opportune moment to start having that conversation.
The Human Rights Commission in South Africa, 20 years in existence, as I just mentioned. How do you reflect on this 20 years? Of course, we come from a very euphoric time in the 90s to today. Is it any different now?
We've made significant progress, particularly in respect of socioeconomic rights. So there's a large proportion of South Africans that over the last 20 years have had access to basic services, access to education, access to health, for example. But if we look at issues of substantive equality, and this is the question of whether we've actually addressed an unequal society, unfortunately South Africa remains one of the most unequal places in the world. and that is something that we need to continue to actually work on going forward.
When we crossed to Durban, we heard our reporter there, Vuyo Mvoko, talk about the rights that people need to know in the Bill of Rights, where this comes from and so forth. But with rights come responsibilities. Do you think we understand our responsibilities? Or even more importantly, do we respect the rights of others as much as we want our rights to be respected in South Africa today?
I think we're quite a young constitutional democracy, right? And so we still are struggling with these issues of rights and responsibilities. We don't have a very constitutionally literate population, and I think one of the key issues that we need to address is education. People need to be more aware of their rights, but they also need to be more aware of the Constitution in general. There's a very small proportion of South Africans that are actually aware of the provisions of the Constitution, and that can be quite dangerous.
Now, I have to put you on the spot, unfortunately. We've seen the last year or so, we've seen many instances of people's rights being infringed on campuses and during other protests here in South Africa. Are you at the Human Rights Commission concerned about the rearing of its ugly head, these kinds of infringements, and how do you view what is happening? I would like to think specifically on our campuses.
It's clear that South Africa's public education system, and particularly the public higher education system, requires a lot of reflection in terms of how transformation is happening. These are the places that are going to be producing our future leaders. So we are definitely aware of these challenges, and we are definitely keeping an eye on the situation and investigating as much as we can.
Do you have more racism cases now than you've had ever before, or is that just in the imagination of people?
We've had about 600 cases in the last financial year. That is the largest number of race-related discrimination cases. But it also needs to be viewed in context of the fact that we are an expanding institution, which means that all complaints are actually getting bigger and more numerous.
And of course, they do get the consideration from the Commission, I'm sure. But in conclusion, just take us quickly through the process. If I feel that my rights have been violated in any way and I want to approach the Human Rights Commission, what do I do?
So there's numerous ways in which a member of the public might be able to approach the Human Rights Commission. You might be able to go physically to an office. You could do a walk-in. We have 9 provincial offices. You are able to call the South African Human Rights Commission. Our central line is 011-877-3600. You could also lodge a complaint via email or on the website, sahrc.org.za.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Faraz Mohammed is a senior researcher for equality at the South African Human Rights Commission. Of course, it's International Human Rights Day today. Here in South Africa, we celebrated specifically United Against Racism. That's the call from the highest office in the land on this Human Rights Day, the 21st of March. Now, we went on a tour of the Constitutional Court precinct with retired Judge Albie Sachs, who was one of the key figures in creating the cultural atmosphere of the court and its artwork. Now, I can tell you, journalist Tebogo Alexander spoke to the retired Constitutional Court judge and activist and asked him about his life of activism and his role in working on South Africa's constitution.
We made a great promise, and basically in terms of the promise of creating an open democratic society where we have elections, where the president steps down, where we have strong courts, we have a free, lively press, and people speak their mind. Yes, we have kept it. In terms of a better life for all, well, I think life is better for most, but there's still massive problems, and there are all sorts of other issues. People often ask me, is this the country you are fighting for? And I think, and I say, yes, it is the country we're fighting for, but it's not the society we're fighting for. And we must use the country, the Constitution, our values, our highest ideals, the freedoms that we won to get the society that we want.
What are your impressions at some of the interpretations of the significance of the Constitutional Court? Not too long ago, I think one politician referred to maybe not the Constitutional Court, specifically the Constitution, one politician referred to it more or less as a guide. How then there was a sense of concern at that interpretation. Does it concern you that lawmakers don't have a proper grasp of what this document is all about?
I don't think South Africa is unusual in that respect. But what is unusual is the Constitution gave us a country. It wasn't just a document. Once you got independence, then you get a constitution. It really constituted the nation. We got rid of the Bantustans, we got rid of apartheid, we achieved dignity for everybody, we achieved our rights, we achieved a Bill of Rights that's for everybody. It's not for majorities and minorities and blacks and whites, for human beings. So in that sense, the Constitution humanized our people. And we paid enormous attention to the detail. It took 6 years. There's this common idea that somehow the saintly, marvelous Nelson Mandela got together with the wise, pragmatic de Klerk, and they got into a corner and did a deal. It wasn't like that at all. It was a rough process. It took 6 years. There were breakdowns. People were being killed. Chris Hani was assassinated. We had massacres. We had rolling mass action. We had as much going on outside the negotiating chambers as inside, but eventually we got the Constitution. And we made it. We South Africans made it. We looked into each other's eyes and we got a basic foundation. How can we live together as equals? And the Constitution didn't establish a status quo that couldn't be altered. The Constitution established a framework of rights and justice and freedom for us to move towards transformation and change. And the theme of transformation, Tebogo, is written right into the Constitution itself. It speaks about achieving full rights for everybody. It's an idea of a document that moves, as a country moves. And really what we need is, if there are problems, and there's serious problems in this country, use what the Constitution gives us, the freedoms and rights that it gives us, the rights of workers to organize, the rights of people to protest peacefully, the right to vote, the right to speak, the right to challenge, the right to demonstrate. These are all rights we get from the Constitution. Use them to get the changes that we want. Don't denounce the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that prevents major change in this country. On the contrary, we crafted it in such a way as to promote change, to promote transformation.
Can I go to the beginning? You were born into a very politically active family. Could you briefly share it was your parents and their activism?
You know, I was just thinking, preparing for this, if anybody was made in South Africa, it's me. Even my name, Albie. I was named after Albert Nzula. He was an African trade union leader. He was in the Communist Party. He met my parents in the Communist Party. He died, and they were so inspired by him that their first child, that's me, was named Albert, after Albert Nzula. If you look even at my shape, the bomb that blew off my arm was made in South Africa. So my whole destiny has somehow been invested in this country. My mom worked as a typist for Moses Kotane. He was the General Secretary of the Communist Party. He used to joke that Ray, Comrade Ray, taught me to read and write in a night school. Now I'm her boss. And my mom would say to me and my brother, tidy up, Uncle Moses is coming. And the Uncle Moses was not Moses Cohen or Moses Kontarovich, it was Moses Kotane. So I grew up in a home where change, beliefs, ideals, respect for everybody was just part of the nature of the world that I grew up in. In that sense, I didn't have to fight against the racial prejudices that most white kids grew up with. I had to fight to achieve the country of equality, of freedom, these were the beliefs of my parents. My dad, Albie Sachs, was Secretary of the Garment Workers Union. One of the prominent shop stewards was a certain person called Lillian Ngoyi, and lots of people learned their politics through the union movement. And they learned about democracy, about electing shop stewards, about voting, about bargaining, about strategies, about cutting across the lines of race and tribe and color and background because you were all workers together. So that was the kind of world I grew up in.
Do you recall your first political moment of awareness of the politics of this country? Can you share us that recollection?
I recall very well a meeting. It was on April the 6th, 1952. And that was 300 years after Jan van Riebeeck came and planted his flag, and we used to learn it in the history books. Our history started then. And so the regime is celebrating with aeroplanes and marches and public holiday, and I'm with maybe 200 people in the Salt River Town Hall, and overwhelmingly black people. And that was the day it was announced the Defiance campaign is going to start. And they're calling for volunteers. And they're singing the songs. And the songs used to be very sad songs. My boye, my boye, my boye, Africa. And then Zenzenina, Zenzenina. And suddenly, volunteers obey the orders, volunteers obey the orders, volunteers obey the orders, be ready for the action now. Dr. Maroka, Dr. Dadu, J.B. Marks, Kotani Libapapi, volunteers obey the orders. And they call for volunteers, and I want to rush up, take me, take me. And my comrade, Wolfie says, no, you can't. I said, why not? He says, it's not for whites. I said, but we're fighting apartheid. He says, yeah, it's a black struggle led by black people. I said, well, tell the leaders I want to take part. And that was in April 1952, and in December 1952, I led a small group of 4 white people to sit on the post office bench in General Post Office, Cape Town, marked non-whites only. They wouldn't arrest us. They said, no, you can't sit there, you can't sit there. We know we can't sit here, we are defying the unjust laws, and eventually they came, and I must say I was much braver then than I am now. A tall policeman, my boy, yeah, and the crowd shouted, yeah, Africa, yeah, Africa. I'd never do that now. I'm much too polite now. But when I say that now and I remember that and I see the young people demonstrating and marching, they're me, they're the young Albie. And so I get a great sense of inspiration. I don't often agree with tactics and strategy and the slogans, but the passion, the idealism. It's not about money, it's not about jobs, it's not about being important. It's about who are we? Who are we? Why do we go to university? Why are we struggling? What kind of country do we want? That's the part that I love. And it reminds me of now, the early 1950s, I was part of that generation.
The full extended interview that Tebogo Alexander did will be available, of course, on our platforms throughout the rest of the day and the week. It's about 54 minutes long, and a wonderful interview that was. Now, it's International Human Rights Day. We're celebrating it here in South Africa under the theme United Against Racism. Seemingly, racism issues have been in the media in recent times, and also comments on social media have, well, caused a lot of division here in South Africa, we can call it. Let's take a look at some of the comments that have been coming in with regards to United Against Racism is our constant today. Zach Mohotsi talks about apartheid was a human rights violation, yet nobody has been punished for it. Human Rights Day, that's what we call reconciliation. Sipho Sitole talks about on Human Rights Day, we each can repay those who lost their lives by ensuring that racism starts with me and achieving social justice without delay, says Sipho. Mongezi talks about that humans need Human Rights Day. How ironic. We remember Sharpeville, Human Rights Day, Sharpeville Day. Yes, we need to remind ourselves. Elaine Redcliffe talks about Happy Human Rights Day to all South Africans. We salute all the lives lost in the fight for our rights. Racism stops with me, sending love to all. Thank you very much, Elaine. Then, remember us, SA. It says, this Human Rights Day, remember those who sacrificed their all to protect, and maybe we should add, and fight for our human rights. Do we take those rights a little bit lightly in today's world? Some people think we do. Anyhow, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the globe. We'll start in Europe this morning, where the Times reports that David Cameron has told a cabinet colleague that he blames George Osborne for the row over disability cuts that has rocked the government there. Then in Australia, the Daily Telegraph reports that the teenage daughter of Australian Islamic State terrorist Khalid Sharif has spoken out from the hellhole of Syria, describing the daily battle to keep herself, her 4 younger siblings and her baby alive as stressful but normal. Then, the Jerusalem Post in Israel reports that Turkey has identified the suicide bomber behind Saturday's attack in Istanbul as a member of the Islamic State born in the southern Turkish city of Gaziantep. Interior Minister Efkan Ala said this yesterday. Let's take a quick look at the events around the country in South Africa today. Of course, we'll start here in Johannesburg, where the Anti-Racism Network of South Africa is hosting a march in Sharpeville, where they will recommit to fighting the scourge that is racism. Proceedings will start at the Pelindaba Cemetery this morning. Then, in Port Elizabeth, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, Minister of Higher Education Dr. Bladen Zimandi, and Nelson Mandela Bay Executive Mayor Danny Adan will commemorate the 1985 Langa massacre in the town of Uitenhage. Also in Cape Town, the Goed Gedag Trust is hosting a Human Rights Day event for farm workers who live on 42 farms in 18 different rural communities in the Western Cape. The event aims to raise awareness of the need to do whatever it takes to protect the rights of farm workers and rural communities. Well, this is our question today. What is the most important principle of a non-racial society? That's the question we ask you today. Principle is spelled wrongly, by the way, but we'll try and fix it in the break. See you shortly.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here. We're building up to a special broadcast. Well, it starts at 11. United Against Racism. The event is being held under the banner on International Human Rights Day at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. Now, in South Africa, the burning of tyres is a signature move during protests or even wage disputes. But in recent weeks, there have been numerous incidents around the country where protesters are burning trains and buses, even buildings, following their unhappiness with the services or the demands that they feel are not being met. A factory even was set alight in Mandeni 2 weeks ago, as well as a car and municipal buildings. Last week, the Department of Higher Education said that recent protests at universities have caused, listen to this, 145 million rands worth of damage. That's only since the beginning of this year. That's leaving aside last year's damage. But where do we draw the line between expressing our rights or fighting for our rights and engaging in criminal activity? We have to find the balance. Joining us today is specialist psychiatrist Dr. Daniela Eliasov. She's here to kind of answer the tough questions, the questions we don't really have answers for in South Africa, or maybe we're searching for these answers. But let's just put it in context. We've seen, there's unhappiness with the rise of incidents of racism, not just on social media, but elsewhere in South Africa. As a professional, how do you view what's been going on in South Africa with regards to the race argument in the last 6 months, if one can call it that?
Well, I think the fact that we have platforms such as social media, I think that probably changes the game quite a bit. I would imagine that the racism has been there all along, but now we've got just more platforms to express it, which is the problem, and that's how these incidents are arising. Whereas, sort of 10 years ago, we didn't have Twitter, Facebook. So I think it's just being brought to light more.
Yeah, there's a platform created for it. I want to talk about Human Rights Day now. Let's talk about Human Rights Day. What I would like you to talk to us about is rights versus responsibilities. We are very aware of our rights, or we'd like to talk our rights up a lot, but we often infringe on the rights of others when we fight for our rights. What kind of mindset is that we have?
So I think you've brought up a very important point, that part of exercising your own rights, sometimes if it can infringe upon the rights of others, and I think that's where the danger falls, and that's where we've got to be quite aware that, for example, my right to freedom of expression might compromise your right to have to equality in this country. So I think there's sometimes a fine line, and it's not always clear-cut. I think that we're seeing a lot of cases now that you've just mentioned of people trying to exercise their rights, freedom of expression, freedom to protest, but in a way that it does infringe on the rights of others.
Yeah, on screen now, this was at Northwest University about a month ago. This is the damage after the buildings were set alight. We've seen the number, 145 million rands worth of damage on all of our campuses around South Africa. That's at the heart of the issue. Even our trains are being set alight. 65 trains have been set alight in the last year. That's the official number from PRASA. Now, it's not just fighting for our rights. It's almost every protest, and even in the case of being unhappy with the service, the train service, we set the trains alight. How do you view this scenario where we are burning things in order to fight for our rights?
So I think it's quite a sad situation that has arisen, because I think it's one thing to fight for your rights and to be vocal about what you think you deserve, but I think that we're seeing a lot of cases where it's expressed in quite an antisocial way, in quite a way that is not in keeping with, respecting the rights of others and living in harmony.
Yeah.
A lot of the protests that we're seeing are actually turning quite violent towards others as well as property.
Yeah.
And that's quite in keeping with a rather antisocial view and a rather self-centered view of how I must sort of demand what I believe is due to me, and possibly compromising the rights of many others at the same time.
The disturbing thing for me is when we look at the pictures that we've seen on screen, we always see a lot of children, young people are amongst the mix, or the mob, if one can call it that. You see a lot of young people are exposed to this kind of thing. How do we attack this mindset, or how do we change this mindset, especially in young people who are witnessing this kind of action and therefore think that this kind of behavior might be quite normal, and then this sort of thing is perpetuated? How do we change this?
That's a $1 million question. I think it is a problem that in South Africa we are teaching our kids that, if you demand what's yours, a way to sort of go about driving your point home would be to destroy property and engage in quite violent activities, which is obviously not a good way of showing our youth the way forward. A lot of antisocial behavior begins in childhood and adolescence, and one of the criteria for a conduct disorder or an antisocial personality is burning things, destruction of property. So what we get is adults engaging in this antisocial behavior and possibly influencing children around them, and then we just perpetuate the problem.
Do we call these people delinquents? Is that fair comment, or is that a professional thing that you, a professional label that you give these? Is this delinquency?
So I think it's difficult to say, and I think it would have to be on a case-by-case basis. A person, we call it an antisocial personality, is a person who's engaged in sort of criminal behavior and infringing on the rights of others from an early age, and it's a pervasive pattern. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if some of the individuals involved in this probably are more of an antisocial type of personality, but then I would also imagine that there's others who are just maybe not antisocial in all their dealings, just isolated incidents where they've been influenced or not taught to do any differently. So I think it's difficult to generalize.
With our history here in South Africa, you know, in the old days, in my youth, that was how we protested against the government of the day, which was the apartheid system, and we all felt that there was a legitimate enemy. Is this a spillover or a carryover, or is it possible to have that kind of hangover, if we can call it an apartheid hangover, that we see in the kinds of protests around the country?
I think it's a difficult question, and again, I wouldn't be sure of the answer, but I would imagine that there is a spillover as such, in that back in the days where it was a justified cause and people were sometimes resorting to violence to drive their point across and try and actually obtain their rights, which were completely denied to them at that point. I think that's the way that we've learned to protest, and that's the way we've learned to deal with things. And I think it's almost pervasive in that we're quite a violent country generally. So I think it's a problem that our way of solving problems is destruction of property, violence. I think it's a big problem going forward.
Talking about going forward, what's the advice that you would, that if I was a country, what's the advice you would give me now?
It's a very difficult one. If I knew the answer, I mean, I think if any of us knew the answer, you know, somebody would have done something by now. But I think that, again, it all comes down to, in my opinion, is education. And I think, you know, if we sort of start by educating people and teaching them the right, you know, sort of educating them at a school level, intervening when they're children, I think that would probably be the best way going forward. But it's a question I really wish I could answer.
Dr. Ellisov, I thank you for joining us as always. Specialist psychiatrist Dr. Daniela Ellisov is, we're all trying to make sense of what is happening in our country right now. And, of course, today we're dealing with the issue of racism on Human Rights Day. The official event is down at the Moses Mabhida Stadium, where our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko, is standing by. Good morning, Vuyo.
Well, welcome once again to the Moses Mabhida Stadium, and that is where the main commemoration rally will be held, and that's where we're expecting President Jacob Zuma to give a keynote address to the country, and that's in commemoration of marking 22 years into democracy, Human Rights Day. How do we look as a nation? And to help us answer that question and to talk us through what's going to happen, I'm joined by the Minister of Arts and Culture, Minister Mthethwa. Welcome, Minister, and thank you very much for joining us, Nyambos.
Thanks so much for you.
Well, I guess I should start by asking the theme of uniting against racism. Why that theme?
Well, we have to always keep the issue of racism and the endeavor to build a non-racial society always on the radar. In the recent past few weeks, months, we have seen the upsurge in racial tension in our country, and therefore our project of nation building and social cohesion gets affected with such intolerances. We have a society always to take a stand against racism, but look beyond just taking a stand and showing our anger, but how do we then undermine those few amongst us in our society who yearn for the years gone by, that those will never come back. We are forging forward in building a nation, because you also understand, Vuyo, that 1994 we inherited a state without a nation. In that people were under one statehood, under one sovereign state, which was South Africa, but the conquerors ensured that communities are divided. There is no sense of unity, there is no sense of nation. So that process continues, and I can say that 22 years into our democracy, the culture of human rights is being entrenched in our society. Everybody knows about their rights, about their human rights. One thing we have to work tirelessly on is the responsibility which all of us have as citizens. But the culture of human rights is taking root, which is good. We need to continue on that path.
Looking at the events of the past couple of months, and given our history, with the benefit of hindsight, did we perhaps relax a bit and never really got to attend to the issue of racism and nation building, and the events of the past couple of months taking us by surprise?
Well, not really, Vuyo. This is one intolerance which is deeply entrenched in society. It's not just a prejudice. It's systemic. It's ideology. And therefore, comparing ourselves with even the developed nations of the world, you would see that yes, we have challenges, but they are not insurmountable. Last month, my counterpart, the Minister of Culture from Sweden, visited us here. And one of the things, Sweden being Sweden, and it's one of those, highly regarded democracies, she wanted us to share notes on how to attend to the issue of racism. You look at the United States of America today, what is happening in the UK, in Europe, and so on. So when we look at this thing, we need to say that we'll be moving away from it into social progress. And if we agree that that's what we'll be doing, we'll then agree that the road towards that is always under construction. What becomes important is when it manifests itself, what do you do? Because the past 20 years in South Africa, we've been experiencing racism without racists. Racism is no longer in the statute books, but subtle ways, covert ways of racism will always be there, but we need to nip it in the bud because it's not an abstract thing. It's related to the colonialism of a special type, which South Africa has been characterized all along. It is about the ownership of the means of production in South Africa, the ownership of the economy, the attendance to those matters, because social justice cannot be divorced from economic justice. Those are the issues which make people feel that because they are privileged, they deserve certain things in society. If you look at what happened in this province in December, what this lady Sparrow was saying, that black people should not go to beach. It's not about that. It is about the fact that they feel that they are threatened, they are privileged, they are entitled to these things. So it's more of the privilege.
Well, let's hope, Minister, these conversations continue indeed. And as you said, we nip this problem in the bud. The Minister of Arts and Culture, Minister Mthethwa. Of course, these conversations continue. We're expecting a little later President Jacob Zuma to give that keynote address. For now, though, it's back to you, Mr. Mthethwa, back in the studio.
Vuyo, thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. A big day today. Now, good morning. This is what we've got for you in sports. A quick sneak peek where our top stories. South Africa beat Afghanistan by 37 runs in a World 2020 Group 1 game in Mumbai, India. The Proteas, who won the toss and chose to bat first, put up 209 runs on the scoreboard. It proved too much for a gutsy Afghanistan, who were bowled out for 172 in 20 overs.
Quinton de Kock once again played his role as opening batsman to perfection. And although he lost his partner Hashim Amla early in the innings, he kept the scoreboard busy. After Amla left, scoring 5, de Kock and captain Faf du Plessis scored 65 runs for the second wicket. Du Plessis was however caught napping when he got run out for 41 from 27 balls, while de Kock soon joined him in the dressing room, scoring 45 from 51 deliveries. AB de Villiers and JP Dumnie carried on the good work with a 76-run stand. But despite solid batting, it initially looked like the Proteas might not go past the 200-run mark. That all changed in the 17th over when de Villiers hit Rashid Khan for 29 runs from just 6 balls, which included 4 sixes. De Villiers departed soon after that for 64 from just 29 balls. Dumnie and David Miller helped their team to 209 as Miller scored 19 from 8 balls and Dumnie finished unbeaten on 29. But the Protea bowlers once again struggled in the opening power play. Mohammad Shahzad punished all the bowlers he faced, scoring 44 runs from just 19 balls. After just 3 overs, Afghanistan had 47 runs on the board before Chris Morris took the ball. He's been under pressure after a poor performance against England, but redeemed himself somewhat by bowling Shahzad. Morris got another wicket in his next over, but Afghanistan managed to keep the run rate going despite that. They reached 140 for 4, and the tide turned in the Proteas' favour when Imran Tahir got rid of Muhammad Nabi. After that, wickets fell on a regular basis, and Morris was named man of the match, taking 4 wickets for 27 runs. And although the Proteas will have to work on their bowling early on, the amount of extras they conceded was much better than in the game against England. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
As you know, it was a very busy weekend, but I'll just give you a quick summary of the PSL Absolute Premiership results from yesterday. Literally, Golden Arrows losing 3-0 to SuperSport United on Saturday. Free State Stars 1-1 draw with Polokwane City. And then Platinum Stars beating former title contenders Black Aces 1-0 in Phokeng. Chipa United a 2-2 draw against Maritzburg United in Nelson Mandela Bay. Now, later on, I'll be bringing you all of the log standings and exactly what it means for all of this. But in the meantime, this is where we're going to end it with the sports for this particular hour. And now I hand over, I believe, to Testimonies. So it's not going to be Testimonies, it's going to be going to the end of it.
Adventure film starring Ivan Buerta and Donnelly Roberts. The story begins in the beautiful vineyards of Paarl in the Western Cape. The adventure takes off when the characters find themselves on the tropical island of Love, Mauritius.
Josephine's work is more interesting and distinguishable. She visits war-stricken zone countries to tell the story of the damage war often leaves behind.
This particular exhibition's case, places that are named after conflict or disaster or war or reconciliation.
And basically what it is it's a collection of the best animated short films from around the world this year. And the idea is to inspire animators and directors with this exciting content. And so that's been offered to us as a cinema, and we're very excited to be screening the animated show of shows here in South Africa.
Join Refulwe Mulwa for that 1-hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Friday at 9 p.m. on Trends.
Preparing for victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Monday, the 21st of March 2016. As you know, it's Human Rights Day today. This is Newsroom on SABC News on Channel 404. If you've just joined us, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome as we broadcast live from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preslin, and with me is Renee Vest joining us in studio this morning, also to join us on the news desk. Good morning.
Good to be here, Elvis.
Wonderful. Now, today we're also asking you a question. You know, it's a very important question. We're asking you, what is the most important principles to build a non-racial society here in South Africa? I'd like to know from you on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. Like us there and become part and parcel of this growing family. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. The African National Congress National Executive Committee stands firm in support of the President Jacob Zuma in light of the Gupta controversy.
South Africa looks back to draw lessons from its painful past as the nation observes human rights.
And US President Barack Obama has described his visit to Havana as a historic opportunity to engage with the Cuban people. Obama is the first sitting American president that has set foot on Cuban soil in 88 years. Now, those are all the headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Elvis, good morning. Thank you very much. It is an historic day on all fronts, out in Cuba as well as across the world. Sharpeville Day, some people remember it as. Good morning to you. This is what I have for you in the sports today.
And another one that's perfect.
The Proteas keep their World Cup aspirations alive with a 37-run victory over gutsy Afghanistan.
You are an amazing competitor. You changed our game, and honestly, if it wasn't for you, how hard you work and seeing you play so well, I wouldn't be as motivated to come back and work so hard. So I want to thank you from the bottom of the heart for the sport.
Victoria Azarenka pays tribute to Serena Williams as she beats the world #1 to take the Indian Wells title.
A 15th win of his Formula One career.
Nico Rosberg wins a dramatic F1 season opener in Melbourne. This as Fernando Alonso miraculously walks away from an horrific crash.
And then it dug in twice.
And that's exactly what we've got for you in the sports. Be sure to stick around for that around about 10:20 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. You will be back later, but right now let's take a look at some tweets that we have on the question that we posed to you this morning. And let's remember that you can post your comments on the Twitter handle. And the question that we posed to you is, what is the most important principle in building a non-racial society? That's the question. And let's now take a look at some of your comments on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. By the way, if you like us on the Facebook page, you can then become part and parcel of this growing family here on Newsroom. Let's take a look at some of those tweets. The first one from Kasmia says, SABC Newsroom, to love one another irrespective of anything else. Hashtag Human Rights Day.
And then we have one from Casa that says, at SABC Newsroom, let's love one another. Education is a key of knowledge. Teach the young ones for a better South Africa.
Wonderful one there from Casa. Kanyiso says, recognition in every sphere. Was working at Venterstad here in the Eastern Cape. Didn't make it because white, same category as you, is most recognized. I'm not too sure what exactly that means, but that's his thought on it.
And this one from Nkosi says, at SABC Newsroom, I would say the main principle of a non-racial society is unity in diversity, respect, tolerance and understanding.
Now, those were some of the comments that we received here, and you can send them to our newsroom not a hashtag. What do you call it? It's our handle, our Twitter handle.
That's correct.
At SABC Newsroom. Top story this morning now. The African National Congress's National Executive Committee has reaffirmed its confidence in President Jacob Zuma following the allegations that the Gupta family is influencing cabinet appointments. The NEC ended a 3-day meeting in Pretoria last night in Irene by rejecting the reports of state capture by the Guptas.
The allegations that the Gupta family influenced appointments of cabinet ministers threatened the stability of the ruling party in the lead up to the NEC meeting. The National Executive Committee resolved to call for those behind the allegations to come forward. This would assist the party to take an appropriate action. Calls for those, including Deputy Finance Minister Mthethwa, to be sacked, rejected as ill-discipline.
Once we have got the information, it can only be that info that determines what action to take. Because running an organization is based on a principle of establishing truth from facts. That is how you run an organization. You try to establish truth from facts. You don't just chase information because it is sensational. It doesn't work that way.
The party will have a follow-up meeting with the Gupta family in the near future. The NEC also reaffirms its confidence in the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. This follows reports of a public spat between him and his Commissioner of SARS, Tom Moyani, as well as the Hawks.
It affirms its full confidence in the Minister of Finance and applauds the work of the President and the Minister to boost confidence in South African economy and attract investments and avoid further downgrades.
The NEC also recommitted the government to address the weak economic growth, including unemployment and high inflation. The need to reduce the high state debt also discussed. Montlengani Dipoku, SABC News, Pretoria.
Mantashe also expressed the NEC's regret at the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Janus Valus. Valus was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of SACP leader Chris Hani.
The NEC regrets the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Janus Valus, the murderer of Chris Hani, and welcomes the decision of the Minister of Justice to take this decision on review. On Human Rights Day, the NEC dedicates this Human Rights Day to the advancement and promotion of non-racial South Africa, and the NEC urges all South Africans to fight racism in all its manifestations and to build unity and cohesion in our country. On Good Friday and Easter weekend, we wish all Christians well over the Easter weekend and safety on their travels to the various church gatherings across the country.
Meanwhile, the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, has responded to the allegations about the Guptas, saying the country cannot be held to ransom by a single family. Now, he was speaking in Durban during meetings between business and political leaders.
We cannot sacrifice our hard-earned democracy and our hard-earned sovereignty because a few people think that they can run our lives. Let us not ever allow that to happen in our country.
US President Barack Obama has described his visit to Havana as a historic opportunity to engage with the Cuban people. Obama is the first sitting American president that has set foot on Cuban soil in 88 years. He says he hopes his visit will pave the way for better ties between the two countries.
The streets of Havana making way for an historic visit by U.S. President Barack Obama. Cubans are preparing to welcome Obama when he arrives on the island nation on Sunday, the first such visit by a U.S. president in 88 years.
Nos vemos
Obama brushing up on his Spanish in a phone call with Cuban comedian Panfilo. Welcome signs with images of Obama alongside Cuban President Raul Castro have gone up in Old Havana. Obama will tour the city shortly after landing on Sunday. He and Castro are due to meet on Monday. A state dinner is planned for that night. Obama will then give a speech on live Cuban TV on Tuesday and attend a baseball game between the Cuban national team and Florida's Tampa Bay Rays. Cubans are hoping the groundbreaking visit will usher in positive changes like the end of the embargo.
Now, it's Human Rights Day today. While Sharpeville is internationally remembered for that particular day, few remembered what actually happened that same day in Langa on the Cape Flats. The Pan-Africanist Congress Positive Action Campaign called on people to leave their passbooks that day at home and march to the local police stations. Residents of Langa adhered to this call, but just like in Sharpeville, a meeting that started out peacefully would end in tragedy.
21 March 1960. Thousands gathered here at a spot called Washington Square today. Also in the crowd, an inquisitive Standard 1 boy, Sonwabo Williams.
What I remember that day, you see, the old people, they told us there will be a meeting here only for the old people, not for the children. So when we see the tank coming inside Langa, we did not know what happened, and all the children, they followed the tank up to, yeah, the tank, the army tank, up to the flats here, and here there was a meeting here.
At 63, Williams still has vivid memories of that day. Leading the thousands was Philip Khosana, a 23-year-old student and PAC leader.
I found Tom completely challenged to be able to respond to the call of our people who had supported our strike. It was too massive for me, but I must say, although I was still young at the age of 23, I had probably more confidence than I have today.
To a young boy like Williams, Khosana was a hero.
Khosana was addressing the people. So since we were children, it was difficult for us to listen what is happening.
The plan was to march peacefully to Langa police station and turn themselves in for arrest. Shirley Gunn is the director of the Human Rights Media Centre. The centre plays a role in the memorialization of South Africa's history. Gunn was part of the Langa Memorial Collective, the team who constructed this structure in memory of the events of that day.
If those arrests were made, then there would be a dent on the economy, because no bread would be delivered the next day, no milk would be delivered, no newspapers. The industry would come to a standstill because the black working class would be behind bars.
The march was called off at the last moment, and following the Sharpeville killings, police were on high alert, patrolling the streets and banning all public meetings. But later that evening, protesters slowly started gathering in Langa again.
The police, they wanted to disperse the people like that. They must all go now. Now they start to shoot the people, and there were people on the top of these flats. And people were flying from the top of the flats down, because there's no other way. And some of them today are cripples today, I can say. Whether we don't know them, who are they, you see. But they are cripples. How can you fly from the top down?
By the end of the day, 3 people were shot and killed. Many more were wounded. Williams clearly remembers what happened next.
That time, I ran home because I've got a a rifle, a bad rifle. We used to buy a bad rifle. Then when I come home, I take my rifle.
A real rifle?
No, a real. It's a bad rifle.
Okay.
That one you put pellets. Yeah, we will put pellets. Yeah. Then I go on top of the roof because I don't stay here. I stay that side. I go on top. I said to my father, I'm going to shoot these people. Then my father was afraid because the soldiers are going to shoot me, thinking that it is a real gun. Because I thought maybe I can fight with it. You see? That time I was a child.
9 days later, Khosana led a march of 100,000 to Parliament, hoping to see the then Justice Minister, J.B. Vorster.
There was 100,000 people with Philip Khosana in the lead marching to Parliament, to town, to the police station, Caledon Square in Cape Town. A massive, massive march. Unprecedented, actually.
That same day, a state of emergency was declared and the PAC and ANC were banned. And these events changed the course of South African history. Today, the Langa Memorial honors the courage and sacrifices of those who fought for that change. It reminds residents of the integral role that Langa played.
Langa Township and the other surrounding townships like Nyanga West, which is called Guguletu today, and Nyanga East, happen to be the focal point of a political party called the Pan-African Congress under Robert Sobukwe, which reflected a lot of hard work in organizing the people and convincing the people about the correctness of opposing the past laws. Therefore, Langa became the burning point, the crucible of what was happening.
Today, Sonwabo Williams finds it sad that the younger generation don't fully grasp the historical value of their day. But his memories are still fresh, and he often thinks of those days.
Said, "Maibuye Africa. Africa must come back. Maibuye means Africa must come." We greet like this.
Abra Barbia, SABC News, Cape Town.
Well, Unating Bengose is standing by in the Eastern Cape. As you know, we're celebrating Human Rights Day today, and he's there to give us more. Unati, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Elvis, and a warm welcome to all our SABC News viewers. Indeed, we are coming to you live from the Eastern Cape, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. We are at Hudnik, Langa Township also. Not to be confused by the one in Cape Town. We are here in Hudnik, the place where the Langa massacre took place. Actually, some 31 years ago. Exactly on this day, we are here to commemorate that day. We understand that there are two events taking place here. There's one that is happening right here where I am, where the EFF is having its own gathering. We understand that not very far from here, the ANC is also having a gathering of its own. But to speak more about what is happening here and what will be happening here going forward, I'm now joined by the Secretary General of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Sir, a very, very good morning to you and a warm welcome to this broadcast. I see the fighters out in their numbers. Tell me the purpose of your gathering here.
This is a political school of the Economic Freedom Fighters, mainly for the party agents of the EFF in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro of the 255 voting stations.
Right, and well, I understand the gathering in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is difficult to take it in isolation in context of what will be happening this year. The elections here, are you guys gearing up for that?
Not at all. It's just coincidental. It happened that in 2014, on the 21st of March, we were with the people of Sharpeville in Johannesburg in Gauteng. And then in 2015, we were with the people of Langa Township in Cape Town. And we committed ourselves that we shall be with the people of Eitenhage, Langa Township, to commemorate the 31st anniversary of the brutal killing of our people, massacred by the apartheid police force, just as the people of Marikana were massacred by the ANC government.
Right, elections around the corner. You said it's your party agents that are here. The main focus on this gathering.
This is a political school wherein we are going to educate our party agents as to why there was a massacre, what happened, what led to all these issues that happened on the 21st March 1985. We will be reading out all the names of the 22 people, and we will be educating our people about their history. Of course, this is a closed a rally and a closed meeting of the activists, the creme de la creme, the best of the best, the activists of EFF, who are the ground force of the EFF election machinery.
Talking about elections, what do you make of your chances in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro?
We are going to increase our percentage from the 5% that we got, and we are going to increase it very hugely. So we are looking at a very huge number of votes from the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. From 18,000, at least we must have a very big impact and take over the metro. It's available. It's up for grabs.
So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That was the Secretary General of the Economic Freedom Fighters, that is Fighter Kaji. And with that, allow us to wrap and hand back to you guys in Joburg.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. We did give you a sneak preview of what we're talking about today in the sports. And South Africa beat Afghanistan by 37 runs in a World 2020 Group 1 game in Mumbai, India. The Proteas, who won the toss and chose to bat first, put up 209 runs on the scoreboard. It proved too much for a gutsy Afghanistan, who bowled out for 172 in 20 overs.
Quinton de Kock once again played his role as opening batsman to perfection. And although he lost his partner Hashim Amla early in the innings, he kept the scoreboard busy. After Amla left, scoring 5, de Kock and captain Faf du Plessis scored 65 runs for the second wicket. Du Plessis was however caught napping when he got run out for 41 from 27 balls, while de Kock soon joined him in the dressing room, scoring 45 from 51 deliveries. AB de Villiers and JP Dumnie carried on the good work with a 76-run stand. But despite solid batting, it initially looked like the Proteas might not go past the 200-run mark. That all changed in the 17th over when de Villiers hit Rashid Khan for 29 runs from just 6 balls, which included 4 sixes. De Villiers departed soon after that for 64 from just 29 balls. Dumnie and David Miller helped their team to 209 as Miller scored 19 from 8 balls and Dumni finished unbeaten on 29. But the Protea bowlers once again struggled in the opening power play. Mohammad Shahzad punished all the bowlers he faced, scoring 44 runs from just 19 balls. After just 3 overs, Afghanistan had 47 runs on the board before Chris Morris took the ball. He's been under pressure after a poor performance against England, but redeemed himself somewhat by bowling Shahzad. Morris got another wicket in his next over, but Afghanistan managed to keep the run rate going despite that. They reached 140 for 4, and the tide turned in the Proteas' favour when Imran Tahir got rid of Muhammad Nabi. After that, wickets fell on a regular basis and Morris was named man of the match, taking 4 wickets for 27 runs. And although the Proteas will have to work on their bowling early on, the amount of extras they conceded was much better than in the game against England. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
Now, third place Platinum Stars closed the gap between themselves and second place Bidvest Wits when they beat Mpumalanga Black Aces 1-0. Meanwhile, relegation-threatened Maritzburg United gained a valuable point away from home when they drew 2-2 with Chippa United in Port Elizabeth.
United had a dream start, scoring inside the first 10 minutes through Pilani Zulu.
Square ball opportunity, perhaps goes instead himself.
But it did not take long for Andile Mbenyani to equalize for the home side. Then Joseph Malongwani put United in the lead 5 minutes before the break. United got the much-needed equalizer just before the break through Evans Rusike.
Oh, it's been very kind for Maritzburg United.
Aces and Bafana keeper Jackson Mabokwani kept his side in the match with this brilliant save. But Indumiso Mabena broke the deadlock, scoring his 7th goal for the Kwena this season, 22 minutes from time. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, with that said, here's a quick summary of the results from the weekend's ABSA Premiership action. As you can see, starting on Saturday, Arrows are losing 3-0 to SuperSport United. Then Free State Stars a 1-1 draw with Polokwane City. Yesterday was where Platinum Stars crept a little closer to the top of the log by beating Aces 1-0. Chippa United 2-2 draw against Maritzburg United in Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. Now going through to the top of the log standings to see what's happening there. As you can see, Mamelodi Sundowns are still on 52 points. Creeping ever closer are Bidvest Wits with just 4 points away with 7 matches to go to the end of the season, as well as Platinum Stars who've got a game in hand. They've only played 22 and they're sitting on 43. This promises to be a very exciting end of season. Chippa United move upwards, Orlando Pirates slip downwards. We go through to the bottom half of the log, and in the bottom half of the log you see not a lot of movement there either. It's just SuperSport United and Golden Arrows swapping places pretty much, but you'll see all the way down to the bottom from position 9 all the way to position 16, and not a lot has changed in terms of positions except for those two, SuperSport and Golden Arrows. Now, 2 of the remaining South African sides have bombed out of the CAF Inter-Club competitions. Kaizer Chiefs and Bidvest Wits are out of the CAF Champions League and the Confederations Cup respectively. Chiefs failed to score in a must-win match against ASEC Mimosas in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, in a match that ended goalless. Amakosi had to reverse a 1-0 defeat they'd suffered a week ago against ASEC in the first round of the CAF Champions League. Meanwhile, Bidvest Wits lost 4-3 away to Azam FC of Tanzania in the first round of the CAF Confederations Cup. Wits lost to Azam 7-3 on aggregate. Many did not give the students a chance to bounce back after they'd suffered a 3-0 defeat at home a week ago. Mamelodi Sundowns in the Champions League are the only surviving South African club. Now, moving into another sport that's popular among South Africans, another exhibition of thrilling end-to-end rugby was witnessed over the weekend in round 4 of Super Rugby. Here's a quick look at the results from the weekend. First up, Hurricanes 41-6 against the Force, and then the Waratahs, they lost to the Highlanders 26-30. This was a replay of the semi-final in Super Rugby 2015, where the Highlanders went on to win that match as well as the final later on against the Hurricanes. Bulls against the Sharks 16-all. First of two draws over the weekend. Then on Saturday morning, the Sunwolves losing 35-9 to the Rebels. The Crusaders beating the Kings 57-24. And the Reds coming up with the second draw of the weekend, a 25-all result there against the Blues at Suncorp Stadium. The Lions beating the Cheetahs 39-22. Stormers 31-11 against the Brumbies. A famous win for the Stormers. The Brumbies have traditionally been a thorn in their side, but the Stormers coming out tops on that particular day. And the Jaguares of Argentina putting up a gutsy, really well-planned and well-fought performance, but they did lose 26-30 to the Chiefs at the death. They've won themselves quite a lot of fans with that performance. And then Super Rugby log overall, the South African group, as you can see, the two leaders, Sharks and the Stormers, they've swapped places. The Sharks are South African group 2 leaders. They're sitting on 15 points. Stormers sitting on 14 points. Then the Lions, Bulls, Jaguares, Cheetahs, Sunwolves, Kings bring up the rest of the groups, of the teams in that group. We'll have a look at the Australasian group. And in the Australasian group, the Chiefs are the New Zealand Conference leaders on 14 points, the Brumbies on 13 points, and all the way through to the Reds at the bottom there. They're sitting on 3 points and a minus 38-point difference. It seems as if Waratahs, Force and Reds are struggling this year. Now in Formula One, Germany's Nico Rosberg won a dramatic season-opening Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne for Mercedes. His teammate and reigning world champion Lewis Hamilton fought his way back to second place after an horrendous start. Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel in a much improved car had to settle for third.
Rosberg's 14th career victory was also his fourth in succession after the German won the final 3 races of last season. His teammate and reigning champion Lewis Hamilton finished second, some 8 seconds behind. Hamilton did well to recover from a chaotic start, with Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel coming in third place.
It's been a great weekend. Thank you to the team. They've done an unbelievable job giving us this incredible car. You know, the car's just been unreal today. To beat the Ferraris was great. And
Vettel had led for much of the race, but his advantage was eroded by poor tyre management, especially after Fernando Alonso's crash brought out a red flag. Alonso's right wheel clipped Mexican Esteban Gutierrez's car at high speed during the 18th lap, and the impact sent the Spaniard's car into a barrier. Alonso walked away from the wreckage, but the red flag came out to hold the race for around 10 minutes as track staff swept away debris and repaired the barriers. Pesinka to SABC News.
Now another result that's hit the headlines this morning is Jason Day clinched a one-stroke victory at the Arnold Palmer Invitational in Florida for his 5th victory in his past 12 starts on the PGA Tour. The win, which is the Australian's 8th in the tour, sees him rise from 3rd to 2nd in the world rankings. Day ran up 3 bogeys in the first 6 holes to open the door to his 6 rivals. It then became a 3-man race late in the round between Day, Kevin Chappell and American Troy Merritt. Chappell had the lead with 1 hole left, but dropped a shot at the par 4 18th. That opened the door for Day, who also pushed his drive at the last, but drew a decent lie and was able to clear the pond in front of the green and advance his ball into a bunker. Merritt, meanwhile, could have forced a playoff with a birdie at the last, but instead ran up a double bogey and tied for 3rd with Swede Henrik Stenson. They finished at 17 under par, 271, while American Kevin Chappell claimed 2nd place on 16 under after a bogey in the last. And finally, with the start of the 2016 Olympic and Paralympic Games looming, the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee invited local athletes to a 3-day camp at the University of Pretoria High Performance Centre. SABC caught up with a man who has taken the track and field world by storm, Wade van Niekerk, and asked him what he thought of South Africa's medal prospects at the upcoming Olympics in Rio de Janeiro.
I really believe we've got a great generation coming through now. I can promise you there won't just be 1 or 2 medals. There's going to be quite a few, because there's so much guys that's coming through now that's quite confident in their abilities, and it's a generation that pushes one another. We're inspiring one another, so I really feel we're going to get quite a lot of medals out of track and field this year. It was really an amazing feeling, knowing that I really got the opportunity to accomplish something that I wanted to do since I was a child. It was one of my biggest childhood dreams that I had as a youngster, to try and break the 10-second barrier. And yeah, I had that opportunity to do it. And I think what made it more special was the fact that I had my family and friends right there with me to celebrate this barrier or this breakthrough of mine within athletics, and it was really something special to me, knowing that I could do it with my family right there. To me, it was all about trying to improve myself as an athlete. I feel the 100 meters was something that I could have done better, but I didn't have the times on black and white yet, so I just wanted to try it out again after the first time in like 5 years. And I tried pulling coach's leg and asking a coach, is it fine if I can partake in 100 meters? It took a bit of convincing, but she allowed me at the end of the day, and I'm just really grateful that she gave me that opportunity, and I'm just grateful for that the Lord has given me the opportunity where I can actually do something way better and greater than I thought I could. Whether you're number 1 or number 2 or even last, there'll always be pressure. It's just part of the game, it's part of sports. So pressure is something that will always be there, but I mean, I just need to stay focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing and trying to do as best as I can when it comes to Olympics.
Yeah, I just want to thank Kendall Makamate for that sports contribution. Of course, our question today, what is the most important principle of a non-racial society? That's what we want you to tell us. We've had lots of live tweets, of course, coming in. We're not going to look at those. We'll look at those a little bit later. As you know, the main celebrations for Human Rights Day are in Durban at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Now, Vuyo Mvoko is standing by for us there.
Well, thank you very much, Eben. Yes, indeed, we're coming to you live from the Moses Mabhida Stadium here in Durban, and that is where the main rally to commemorate this day is being held. We're expecting President Jacob Zuma to give a keynote address, marching orders, giving us a sense, a pulse, if you like. Where are we as a nation 22 years into democracy? What should be the preoccupation on this day? What are the issues given the events of the past couple of months? I was speaking earlier to the Minister of Arts and Culture, Minister Mthethwa, saying, you know, the events of the past couple of months, even though they took us a bit by surprise, the sorts of things we should actually be expecting, and they are important in that they remind us of where we are coming from, and perhaps the most important thing is for us to then decide what do we do, what becomes our preoccupation, how do we address the issue of racism in particular as a nation. Well, I'm not alone, of course, during this broadcast. I will not be alone. I am with my colleagues. Ayanda is on the other side of this stadium. Ayanda?
Yes, thank you very much. And from my side, I can tell you a great deal of excitement from people who have come here to the Moses Mabhida Stadium to be part of today's national commemoration, Human Rights Day 2016. I'm just looking at the crowds. There's been a great deal of excitement. Of course, people are making their way into the stadium. It's been quite slow in the morning. I don't know whether it has to do with the weather. It seems to be a little bit cooler, and we had a bit of rain earlier on, but certainly more people are making their way into the stadium now, and it's filling up pretty well. We do know that there was a bit of a delay outside, and that delayed the people making their way into the stadium. But I did hear one of the program directors urging people and those that are assisting members of the public to be making their way into the stadium. And of course, you know, Vuyo, you've spoken about that keynote address by President Jacob Zuma. One would understand that it was supposed to start at, I think, at around 11 o'clock, but of course, because of those delays, the president is likely just to come into the stadium a little bit later. But you just said it's myself, and I also have my colleague Blaine Herman. Blaine, over to you.
Yeah, and the call is for South Africans to unite against racism, and I guess it's an important theme considering the recent upsurge in racist comments of late. 2016, I got off to a bit of a rocky start with name calling and slurs. controversial social media comments, and it caused an outrage and drew mass reaction across social media platforms as well as political quarters. Now, you'll remember during his State of the Nation address, President Jacob Zuma actually urged all South Africans to confront racism, the demon of racism, he says, and also called for a more coordinated national effort and pledge in order to fight racism at all levels. Now, this is considering that. This is why we're commemorating the Human Rights Day 2016 as a National Day Against Racism. We're also celebrating and commemorating 20 years since the Constitution was signed into law back in 1996. 1996, December 10th, in fact. President Nelson Mandela signed it into law back in Sharpeville, and it is indeed the supreme law of the land, and it's where our human rights are firmly entrenched. So again, it's an opportunity for us to commemorate, the country to commemorate its commitment to the Bill of Rights. It's an important day, the basis of which lies in Sharpeville. 69 people were killed there back in 1960, 21st March, a date that will indeed live in infamy. And the people that have gathered here, they'll be surely thinking about that painful past as they gather here. There's lots of people still coming in, a few hundreds in fact already. The stage is set for a moving tribute in terms of human rights, where we are at this stage and where are we as a country going to. Beautiful music being played to entertain the crowd in the interim. We're expecting the president to come up to stage and address the nation, and as soon as that happens, we'll cross live. But for now, it's back to Johannesburg.
Thank you very much to Blaine Herman, the team, Vuyo Mboko, Ayanda Mklong. They're all down in Durban to bring you today. It's Human Rights Day. And, of course, in South Africa, we remember a time where we did not honour the rights of all human beings living in this beautiful country. But there are many events of the past that have both broken and transformed nations around the world. From the Holocaust and the Rwanda genocide to what is currently called apartheid Israel. We need to reflect on the past and join together to put an end to the violations that still exist. Now, I'm joined in studio today by the director of the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Centre, Charlie Nates. Very good morning to you, Charlie. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Human Rights Day today. Tell us, how do you at the centre, how do you reflect on a day like today?
Absolutely. You know, for most people, they don't know that human rights, people never spoke about human rights until 70 years ago.
No.
It was just not words that were spoken about. After the Holocaust, the establishment of the United Nations, there started to be a conversation about the need for human rights. And indeed, our Constitution, we just mentioned 1996, our Bill of Rights is based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that came out of the United Nations in 1948. So for us, our mission, our vision at the Holocaust and Genocide centers around the country is to always remember, not to take things for granted. We need to always remember that humans are humans. There are no humans that are more human than other humans. So we need to celebrate that and look after that. Today we have a very interesting panel discussion at 3 o'clock about looking at traumatic pasts. Germany, Armenia, Rwanda, of course the Holocaust, and then look at how countries are confronting this difficult past, and hopefully look at ourselves in this too.
Apartheid South Africa, in itself was a traumatic past. How do you reflect on South Africa and the unique problems that we're battling with as a nation to kind of come to terms with regards to our traumatic past?
Absolutely, and I think one of our issues is to really talk about the past. We don't really tend to go to our parents and ask them, what did you do? What did you suffer? What did you do? We don't have those conversations yet. We need to have those conversations yet. Just to say that it's not coming as something that is very, very easy thing. It took Germany 23 years after the Second World War and the Holocaust to actually speak about the past. The student revolt of 1968 allowed them to speak about the past. We are 22 years later. It's time to speak about our past.
We're starting to talk about race, and the government has actually put forward today as the day to start that conversation around race. Of course, today the theme is called United Against Racism. 23 years later, almost, the scary thing is history tends to repeat itself, doesn't it?
Sadly, we as human beings never learn. You think that when you burn your hand, you will never burn it again. And of course, after so many atrocities, we said never again. But the never again is until the next time. When we celebrated our independence, our democratic process in April 1994, 3.5 hours from us, Rwanda was burning. Rwanda, of course, a genocide targeting the Tutsi for 100 days. Almost 1 million Tutsi and moderate Hutus were murdered. So we don't really learn. So we need to talk about it again and again. And we cannot have people say, we heard it, we don't need to speak about it, we had enough of it. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about our past. And I think very strongly that we need to talk about other countries' past in order to learn about what happens when things go very wrong, as in Rwanda.
I want to talk about what's happening in Israel now, and within the context of the Holocaust and what happened. Are you surprised with what is happening in Israel right now?
I'm not really surprised, because conflict such as the one there, very bloody, very, very intense, that sadly you cannot see exactly the end of, desperately cannot see the end of. I'm not surprised, because there are issues that people need to really deal with, nations need to deal with. If you allow me to look at Germany as a very interesting example, because if you look at Germany 80 years ago, it was the highest of dictatorship and fascism. Then you have the highest communism rule, you know, in East Germany. And now Germany is the best democracy in Europe.
The most moderate, the most open-minded. Is it a question of some lessons being learned and others not being learned? I mean, some of the pictures we see, of course, here deals with the Rwandan genocide that as you pointed out, millions of people displaced, more than 1 million people massacred in 100 days. You talk about traumatic past. How do you think you overcome this? You know, in recent times we've seen the language of genocide come out in Rwanda with the kind of conflicts and, of course, the kind of political turmoil we've seen in the entire Great Lakes region. Should we be concerned when we hear the kind of names in South Africa, racial slurs and so forth? Should we be concerned when those slurs start to emerge in the public discourse?
Absolutely. I think that we never should take for granted and say these are only words. Acts of genocide start with words, with dehumanization, with othering. So the minute we hear our leaders say sometimes snakes or cockroaches, we need to be careful. The Great Lake area is a concern. Burundi is a concern. But if you look at a place like Germany that did deal with the past, and if I can again take that example of the refugee issues that we are facing in Europe, and Germany opened its gate to 1 million refugees. We need to look at that. How can we learn from our past not to be xenophobic, not to be homophobic, not to be racist, but to actually open our hearts, open our minds to the other, fight racism, unite against racism.
Thank you very much for joining us. Tali Nates is the director of the Holocaust and Genocide Centre here in South Africa. Be very careful, she says, about the kind of language that we use within this context, because genocide is the next step. When you start calling people cockroaches, when you start calling people snakes and other names, the language of genocide that we've seen in places like Rwanda, that kind of rhetoric should have no place in South Africa. 22 years after our democratic dispensation, yes, it is now. It is the right time to have the conversation around race. It is something that we've never dealt with 100% in South Africa. We need to have that mature conversation across our campuses everywhere in our communities. We need to have that conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always it's very easy to call for war and for revolution if you've never grown up in this kind of thing, is it?
Absolutely. You need to be very wary of very, very harmful words.
Thank you very much once again. Of course, we remember Human Rights Day today around the world. We're having a conversation around race, united against racism. That's what this special broadcast is all about. Let's now cross to our reporter Zolani Moyo, who is in the Eastern Cape. A very good morning to you, Zolani. Just tell us, what are you guys doing in the friendly province?
Well, a very good morning to you. Well, what I can tell you is that in New Guinea, it's raining cats and dogs here on this side of town. Well, this year marks the 31st anniversary of the Langa massacre. This morning we saw Mayor Jordan and members of the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC, paying homage to the fallen heroes. With me I have the MEC in the Eastern Cape for Economic Development, Sakhumzi Soyo. MEC, obviously, this, according to the Udenhague Massacre Foundation, they are saying that families have been crying foul over the years they've been neglected by government.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us opportunity to explain some of these matters. We've been here together with the Executive Mayor of the city, Comrade Danny. We've had an engagement over time. He has set in his office a team which is working tirelessly to sort some of the glaring issues that affect the community and the families involved. Already, there is about 60 slots for jobs who have been allocated for those who have been affected at the time. He, as well, is working on a process together with the Department of Justice for reparation realization, which is a process itself which is going to be pronounced very soon as to what sort of arrangements are going to be made for those affected families. So we're working very hard to finalize some of the matters which ought to address such concerns. This morning you have heard yourself, they were talking about the condition of the gravesite, something which the mayor is taking quite seriously. Here he is. We have had that discussion. There is that commitment. You would somewhat appreciate that Nelson Mandela Bay has for quite some time not realized the sense of stability out there. We're very much happy, both in an organizational factor, that at least we've got someone who's taking these matters seriously going forward.
Well, what took you guys so long as government, to respond to these challenges?
It's not a question of taking us a time over them. You would appreciate that work in progress, as you have seen how beautification has taken place in the monument site itself, and that process has allowed government to begin to look into specificity of those who have been affected. And the mayor has, for now, worked on some of the pertinent aspects which would make the families more happier.
That was the MEC for Economic Development, Sakhumzi Msoyi, basically telling us the plans that government is going to intensify, to try and reach out to the affected families. Well, that is what I hear for now in Newton. Back to you in Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, Zolani Moyo, down in the Eastern Cape. Of course, we're counting down to the official event that kicks off in, minutes' time, I'm told. A couple of minutes' time, the official event kicks off at the Moses Mabhida Stadium, of course, in Durban, where State President Jacob Zuma is expected to deliver the keynote address sometime after 11 this morning. We'll be live there shortly. But, of course, lots happening around the country. Gauteng Premier David Makura will lead the National Human Rights Day commemoration in Sharpeville today. On this day, struggle heroes who fought against past laws in 1960 are remembered. Apartheid police killed 69 people and wounded 180 others that were protesting against the past laws of the day.
Well, the visuals that you're seeing right now are of the DA leader Musi Maimane speaking to Mayor Adelaide, who was one of the people here in Sharpeville who witnessed that massacre back on this day in 1960. He's also here to lay some wreaths with members of the Democratic Alliance here at the Sharpeville Memorial. Just a few minutes earlier, we also saw other political parties, including the PAC and the ANC, who also came to lay wreaths here this morning. Certainly a day to be remembered by South Africans for the sacrifices that were made for South Africa to achieve the democracy that we now all enjoy as South Africans. Let me just speak to the DA leader, Mmusi Maimane, who's also here this morning. Mr. Maimane, thank you very much for your time this morning. I see you here with Mum Adelaide, who's one of the people who witnessed this tragic a day back in 1960. First of all, from the Democratic Alliance's point of view, obviously here to pay tribute.
Absolutely. It's a historic day in our country and in our nation. We dare never forget tragedies such as this one, because they remind us more critically that we should dare never live in a country that will violate people's rights, that we need to live in a reconciled society that stands and defends and honors the tribute that so many generations from the past have paid with their lives. And when I was speaking to Mema Silo here, she was reminding us of the tragedy that befell her husband. It makes you realize that, in fact, this was a generation of South Africans who put South Africa first, understood what they were fighting for, and said we would even be willing to pay with our lives. And so today our struggle continues to say that this was a generation that played their part. The question before me and the question before everybody here today is, what part do we need to take in advancing the protection of rights of all South Africans, to making sure that their sacrifices are being honored by delivering for the people of South Africa and governing in such a way that their futures are protected, that we make sure that never and never again shall one have an opportunity to oppress another on the basis of race. And so today is a special and a very important day for us.
Mr. Maimane, one of the issues that I guess many people are reflecting on today, we talk about human rights issues, is the issue of racism. The issue of racism is certainly something that many South Africans are saying we should unite against, to fight. As the Democratic Alliance, your stance on, of course, tackling the issue relating to racism?
Racism is a global scourge. It's an evil that prevails still today in our society. And we must condemn, we must fight against it with every bit inside of us. I condemn all acts of racism, because racism not only dehumanizes the person who's the victim, but it also does the same to the perpetrator. But we mustn't stop there. We must proceed and say, what are the structural issues that produce inequality in our society? Why is it today that the plight of a black child is still 100 times more to end up in poverty than that of a white child? Why is it that, in fact, opportunities to get into universities are still skewed on the basis of race? Why is it that when we come to communities such as Sharpeville, you discover that so many still live in such deep poverty and are without work? So when we talk about racism, we can't just stop at the act itself. We must deal with the structure of racism, the elements that perpetuate racism. But also, we must today, it being Human Rights Day, uphold the Constitution. It was the Constitution that gives rights to everybody. The Constitution says you have freedom of association, freedom to practice whatever religion, freedom to live where you choose to live. And so today, in many ways, must also be remembered as a protection of that Constitution. That's why when it takes place that we allow people like Bashir to live the country, we don't protect the Constitution. Our Constitution must reign supreme, because ultimately it guarantees the rights of all of us. And it reminds us that, as the preamble says, that South Africa will belong to all who live in it, black and white. And that's the nation we want to build. That's why I celebrate the DA today, because it represents a movement of South Africans who are from all different races.
Mr. Maimane, I'm afraid I'm going to take this opportunity as well to speak to Mama Silo. Mama Silo, on a day like this, certainly must be difficult for you. It is 56 years later, but I'm sure those scars you still remember.
It reminds me back. I'm remembering my husband, And then my children, I was struggling to make them grow. It was very difficult for me. The children must grow without a father. It was difficult, but God is great. He has protected me. There was mercy on me. Everything that God needs to help me, it was there for me.
Thank you very much, Mama, for your time. The DA leader there, Musi Maimane, also here with Mama Silo. Mama Silo, of course, going back to what she remembers of this day back in 1960. Of course, all political parties are also here to lay wreaths as well, and also to pay tribute to those who were killed back then in 1960. But we'll go back to the studio right now, and we'll certainly bring you much more of what's happening in Sharpeville a bit later on.
Thank you very much.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Monday, the 21st of March 2016. It's Human Rights Day. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preston, be with you until 12. Now, we're asking you that question, of course. But before we get there, let me introduce Katu. Well, I would say a very good morning to you, Katu.
Good morning, Elvis. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Katu will be with us in a short while. But the question that we pose to you is, what is the most important principle to build a non-racial society? This as we celebrate Human Rights Day today. Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. The African National Congress's National Executive Committee has reaffirmed its confidence in President Jacob Zuma following the allegations of the Gupta family who is influencing cabinet appointments.
South Africa observes Human Rights Day today.
And of course, U.S. President Barack Obama has described his visit to Havana as a historic opportunity to engage with the Cuban people. Obama is the first sitting American president that has set foot on Cuban soil in 88 years. That is what you call love your neighbor, right next to them. 88 years, the first sitting president visiting their neighbor. But right now, Kendall Makamata is standing by with your sports news to give you an update there. Very good morning to you, Kendall.
Elvis and Katu, very good morning to the both of you. It's very interesting, very good to have you on board, Katu. And we're also greeting all of our viewers at home as well on this auspicious 21st of March 2016. Good morning. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
And another one, that's perfect.
The Proteas keep their World Cup aspirations alive with a 37-run victory over gutsy Afghanistan.
You are an amazing competitor. You changed our game, and honestly, if it wasn't for you, how hard you work and seeing you play so well, I wouldn't be as motivated to come back and work so hard. So I want to thank you from the bottom of the heart for the sport.
Victoria Azarenka pays tribute to Serena Williams as she beats the world #1 to take the Indian Wells title.
A 15th win of his Formula One career.
And Nico Rosberg wins a dramatic F1 season opener in Melbourne as Fernando Alonso miraculously walks away from an horrific crash. That's what we've got for you in the sports. Be sure to stick around for that about 11:30 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. ANC's National Executive Committee has reaffirmed its confidence in the President Jacob Zuma, following the allegations that the Gupta family is influencing cabinet appointments. The NEC ended a 3-day meeting in Pretoria and Irene last night by rejecting the reports of state capture by the Guptas.
The allegations that the Gupta family influenced appointments of cabinet ministers threatened the stability of the ruling party in the lead up to the NEC meeting. The National Executive Committee resolved to call for those behind the allegations to come forward. This would assist the party to take an appropriate action. Calls for those, including Deputy Finance Minister Mthethwa Jonas, to be sacked, rejected as ill-discipline.
Once we have got the information, it can only be that info that determines what action to take. Because running an organization is based on a principle of establishing truth from facts. That is how you run an organization. You try to establish truth from facts. You don't just chase information because it is sensational. It doesn't work that way.
The party will have a follow-up meeting with the Gupta family in the near future. The NEC also reaffirms its confidence in the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. This follows reports of a public spat between him and his Commissioner of SARS, Tom Moyani, as well as the Hawks.
It affirms its full confidence in the Minister of Finance and applauds the work of the President and the Minister to boost confidence in South African economy and attract investments and avoid further downgrades.
The NEC also recommitted the government to address the weak economic growth, including unemployment and high inflation. The need to reduce the high state debt also discussed. Muntlengani Dipoku, SABC News, Pretoria.
Mantashe also expressed the National Executive Committee's regret at the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Yunus Walus. Walus was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of SACP leader Chris Hani.
The NEC regrets the decision of the High Court to grant parole to Yunus Walus, the murderer of Chris Hani, and welcomes the decision of the Minister of Justice to take this decision on review. On Human Rights Day, the NEC dedicates this Human Rights Day to the advancement and promotion of non-racial South Africa, and the NEC urges all South Africans to fight racism in all its manifestations and to build unity and cohesion in our country. On Good Friday and Easter weekend, we wish all Christians well over the Easter weekend and safety on their travels to the various church gatherings across the country.
Meanwhile, the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, has responded to the allegations about the Guptas, saying that the country cannot be held to ransom by a single family. Now, he was speaking in Durban during meetings between business and political leaders.
We cannot sacrifice our hard-earned democracy and our hard-earned sovereignty because a few people think that they can run our lives. Let us not ever allow that to happen in our country.
Now, on the 21st of March 1985 in Newton Hague, a large crowd of people were on their way to a funeral of 4 young men who were killed by the police. They were prevented by the police to continue and were fired at with live ammunition. 20 people died at the scene of the shooting, and ultimately more than 21 people lost their lives. An exact number of fatalities linked to shooting remains unknown.
Kwakunzima ngela xesha, especially xa kufika yi-20 because kwakunzima ulala because bune-picture.
It was hard back in those days, especially when the 20th of March approached, because it was hard to sleep. You would have this picture of yourself running even while under the blankets. You would picture yourself running because you had a picture of those bullets they fired from the top of their head and the loud noises they made. That memory stayed with me forever since the incident occurred.
Tozama Mgesha remembers that morning of death as if it were yesterday. A bullet struck her in the back. She survived by playing dead. And 30 years after the massacre, life has been difficult.
I used to have a vegetable stand, but I had to close it down because it affected my health. I used to sit there for hours. The doctor asked what I did for a living. That made me sit for so long. He then told me to take a break because the sitting down for so long is affecting my kidneys. So now I'm no longer selling vegetables. I've had to stop and take care of my health because if I die, there'll be no one taking care of this home. I'm the only breadwinner.
The physical damage inflicted by the bullets remain a tangible reminder. But the 30 years have also not dulled the psychological effects of the shooting of many of the victims.
I
have moments where I forget certain things. It really affected my life. I injured my leg during the massacre, and as a result, I am receiving a disability grant. I also got shot on the shoulder. My life was terribly affected by this incident because I never got to work and to take proper care of my kids.
A memorial has been put up to remember the fallen. Every year on Human Rights Day, the victims and their families and friends gather to pay homage to the people who gave their lives for freedom they now enjoy.
The divisions in the Pan-Africanist Congress took another twist today, playing out live in front of TV cameras. During an SABC interview with one faction of the party ahead of the Sharpeville commemoration, a scuffle ensued. The division within the party dates back to 2013 after the expulsion of its president, Mpatlele. Eldrin Sampear, our reporter, as well as cameraman Sam Carl, filed this story.
This is Mudini Maiva, the Secretary General of the PAC faction led by Mpatlele, while explaining why the party wants Human Rights Day to be renamed Sharpeville Langa Day. This happened.
Sorry, oh, who are you? Who are you? You don't actually have a branch. Don't talk about the branch.
Guys, wait. No.
Don't. You are, hey, you are nothing. Hey, we are not going to kill you. We are not going to kill you.
This is the faction led by Luthando Mbinda.
Hey, man.
Mudini Maiva is not the secretary of the PAC. The secretary of the PAC is Mr. Negas Moloto. Mudini, Letlapa, and his other group, they are individuals who have been expelled within the PAC.
Maiba, who locked himself in a room, had to be escorted by police who are now investigating a case of assault. The divisions in the PAC run deep. Last year, both factions held elective conferences. Mpatlele and Mbinda emerged victorious in the respective elections. The party now runs the risk of being banned from running for the municipal elections after the IEC failed to find a solution to the impasse. When we spoke to the IEC earlier on this year, they indicated that the only solution right now will be to have a court of law make a ruling around which political party or which faction of the PAC is the legitimate party of the PAC that will be contesting the municipal elections. But chances are going into these municipal elections, the PAC will not be participating in those elections unless, of course, we get an urgent court ruling with regards to the legitimate faction of the PAC which can run in the municipal elections. And as the country commemorates the Sharpeville massacre, both factions of the PAC will be at the cemetery. Aldrin Sampear, SABC News, Sharpeville.
International news. The American President Barack Obama arrives in Havana shortly for a historic visit to America's longtime adversary. The trip will be first time a serving American president has been to communist Cuba in nearly 90 years. As Malcolm Brown reports from Havana, many Cubans are hopeful that it marks the start of a new chapter.
It's a city where you can track recent history by watching the traffic. Pre-revolutionary American classic cars share the roads with Soviet-era Russian vehicles. Now, just months after the United States reopened its embassy here, Barack Obama's visit is raising hopes that more change is on the way for Cuba's struggling economy.
With the people I talked to in Havana today, everyone is very happy and hoping for something big. Maybe not in what he has to say, but just his presence, because no one can be fighting with such a close neighbor.
Changes in U.S. policy announced just this week chip away at the embargo. They include new rules likely to increase the flow of American visitors. President Obama is gambling that the changes will improve the lives of ordinary Cubans and encourage political reform. Cuba's foreign minister says that if the U.S. really wants to help the Cuban people, the embargo should be lifted.
Do it.
Amidst the thaw, President Obama is under pressure at home and among some activists in Cuba to get more in return, especially on human rights, a long-standing American concern.
I hope some changes will occur between the U.S. and Cuban governments, but for the Cuban people, any change is going to be a very, very slow process. If Obama wants real change for the Cuban people, he has to demand it from the Cuban government.
For many Cubans, the priority seems to be an improvement to the economy, and they see President Obama's visit as a positive step in that direction. Malcolm Brown, SABC News, Havana.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Shoddy police work has once again come under scrutiny after several events in which police investigations was to institutional racism. Two separate rape cases in the Cape Metropole had the country debating whether or not the police put little effort in solving crime in less privileged areas.
22 years since the dawn of our democracy, many underprivileged communities are crying foul about police conduct. They've accused them of using procedures that bring about disproportionate outcomes for black communities. Two separate rape cases in Tukai and Khayelitsha caused uproar on social media. Police officers have been accused of prioritizing the case of 16-year-old Francisca Blocklicher, raped and killed in Tukai Forest. They are said to have nothing to apprehend the killers of 19-year-old Sinokolo Mafevuka, who was raped and killed near her home in Khayelitsha around the same time. In the Bloklige case, her family says the police were called in and they moved swiftly, throwing in all the resources possible to crack the case. At the same time, the family could afford to hire a private forensic investigator and offer a reward in the region of about 50,000 rand for anyone who came forward with information. They wanted justice for their teenage girl.
Well, I've just been to the post-mortem to have a look at my daughter, and I can tell you one thing. It's unbelievable what you see there. It's not that they only hurt her or killed her. They really, really hurt her all over the face. Everywhere, body is unbelievable beaten. So this was not just a case of stealing, robbing, killing someone. It's been much more than that.
48 hours after Francisca's death, 2 suspects were arrested in connection with her murder. The case is currently before court. A slight victory for a family who has lost a loved one at such a tender age. Too distraught to deal with Francisca's death, the family has decided to leave the country. Sinokolo Mafevuka's family in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats knows the pain only too well. Around the same time Francisca was raped and killed, their 19-year-old daughter's body was found in a communal toilet, also raped and killed, just a few steps from her home. For the Mafevukas, hiring a private forensic investigator was not an option. Offering any kind of reward for information was not even a thought. Not only did they lose a child, but now they also need money for the burial. For a whole week after their child's death, police are said not to have made contact with them. Not a single statement was taken from the family. That week, they could not rely on police to assist them in finding their daughter's killers. Procedural malpractice, or simply no justice for this family? Did they not matter? It was not until the Deputy Minister of Police stepped out of Parliament and attended the case herself that things start to happen.
What annoyed us is the fact that it seemed as if the police focused only on one case, the one in Tokai, which is Francisca, and not on Sinokolo. No one knew about Sinokolo. No one knew that we have similar case here in Khayelitsha. Only the police themselves knew about that. They communicate everything. They came up with arrests of suspects with regard to the other case in Tokai. But when it comes to Sinokolo, we didn't hear anything about arrest. We didn't hear anything about some witnesses. We didn't see anything.
We feel very sad because the police didn't inform us about what happened. And it took so long because Sinokolo died last week. And then it took a long time but they come today because of the minister was here.
Khayelitsha community members say this is not new. There are many other rape and murder cases in the area that have fallen by the wayside. They claim there are simply no resources to service the area and accuse police of having a slow response rate in these poverty-stricken areas.
Insult to the over 12 million black people who are staying in informal settlements. So we are demanding to SABS to develop a plan on visible policing in informal settlements. Thirdly, we request or we require SABS to come up to redistribute police resources, especially in black communities. Because when you compare Camps Bay to Khayelitsha, you find that Camps Bay has more police resources in comparison to Khayelitsha. And yet, in the last 10 years, there were only 6 murders in Camps Bay. In Khayelitsha, in the last 12 months, there were 325 murders. And yet, Camps Bay has more police resources than Khayelitsha. And yet, Camps Bay has more competent and has enough ample police resources.
2 weeks later, 2 men were arrested in connection with Sinokolo's death. The case is currently before court. For this family, relocating is not an option. Every day, they are faced with seeing the very place where their daughter's body was found. Their only hope now is that those who have the power to find and bring to book those behind Sinokolo's death will do so. 22 years since the dawn of democracy, South Africa continues to grapple with a lot of issues of race, class, and privilege. The Department of Police says police colleges continue to train police in order to increase resources and to ensure that justice is distributed equally to all South Africans. Nomao Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
As the country commemorates the Sharpeville massacre, last week the Human Rights Commission held a workshop to look at progress made since the establishment of the Human Rights Commission. Tumaole Muhlauli compiled this report.
2016's human rights celebrations come at a time when the country is still reeling from a surge of racial turmoil. 2015 ended on a sour note, with several high-profile racist posts on social media grabbing international headlines. That prompted a slew of anti-racism marches and other similar events in the new year.
It was not the tenacity of the racist legacy.
Former President Thabo Mbeki pulled no punches in his assessment of race relations in South Africa. Several high-profile racist incidents have grabbed international headlines and triggered angry reaction from political parties, as well as plans to pass legislation formally outlawing racism. Mbeki has used his speech to give an analysis of the underlying causes behind South Africa's growing racial tensions. He reminded the audience that racism didn't start with the now infamous Penny Sparrow racist online post.
During the 2000 State of the Nation address, I quoted a comment which had been made by an engineer who was working in one of our companies, and which comment had been unearthed by FAO, the Food and Agricultural, and the Allied Workers Union. And the engineer wrote, and I quote, "I would like to summarize what the Kafirs have done to stuff up this country since they came into power."
Mbeki pulled no punches in his assessment on whether the country has progressed since the dawn of democracy.
However, I believe that perhaps we should answer this question honestly and deal with the consequences of an honest response, however discomforting it may be. Accordingly, I think our answer to the question whether we're making the requisite progress towards achieving the objective of nation building, as we defined it, would be no.
Mbeki says 21 years into the country's democracy, South Africa is just as divided economically as it was in the past, and a bleak outlook for the future if South Africa fails to tackle racism in all its forms.
The longer this situation persists, in spite of the gift of hope delivered to the people by the birth of democracy, the more entrenched will be the conviction that the concept of nation building is a mere mirage and that no basis exists or will ever exist to enable national reconciliation to take place. That's what I said in 1998.
Delegates have heaped praise on the former president's analysis of the root causes of racism.
It looks like we have made very little progress, and that is the sentiment that President Mbeki expressed, that it cannot be business as usual.
Mbeki has stressed the importance of fast-tracking economic transformation and for racism to be treated as a national emergency.
We must talk about...
Speaker of Parliament Baleka Mbete also addressed the event. Mbete says acceleration of land redistribution is the only long-term solution to simmering racial tension in the country. She has warned that universal human rights will not be enjoyed by the majority of underprivileged people in South Africa unless land is transferred to them. Mbete says the scourge of racism and human rights abuses are a global problem.
Our history and the experiences of other countries show that unity and social cohesion are necessary to meet social and economic objectives.
Mbete says accelerating land reform is the only sustainable solution to bridge seemingly growing divisions in the country.
We must insist that our economic growth path de-racializes the economy and makes a fundamental break with ownership patterns of the past. This must also include the acceleration of the allocation of land.
Government says it has effective mechanisms to defend and promote universal human rights for ordinary South Africans.
In addition to the South African Human Rights Commission, we have the Equality Code,
that serves as a mechanism in which disputes relating to violation of these rights can be ventilated, whilst the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development provides administrative support to this court.
Experts agree that institutions like the Human Rights Commission and others have a critical role to play to heal divisions and entrench universal human rights. Dumalo Mohlaudi, SABC News, Midrand.
As South Africa celebrates Human Rights Day, former President Thabo Mbeki says the country still has a lot to do to achieve total human rights culture and real national unity. Mbeki and other speakers slammed racism as one of the biggest challenges to human rights in this country. The former president addressed the Human Rights Commission National Conference of Racism last week. He says 21 years into South Africa's democracy, racially based economic and social divisions are only deepening.
2016's human rights celebrations come at a time when the country is still reeling from a surge of racial turmoil. 2015 ended on a sour note, with several high-profile racist posts on social media grabbing international headlines. That prompted a slew of anti-racism marches and other similar events in the new year.
That it was not the tenacity of the racist legacy.
Former President Thabo Mbeki pulled no punches in his assessment of race relations in South Africa. Several high-profile racist incidents have grabbed international headlines and triggered angry reaction from political parties, as well as plans to pass legislation formally outlawing racism. Mbeki has used his speech to give an analysis of the underlying causes behind South Africa's growing racial tensions. He reminded the audience that racism didn't start with the now infamous Penny Sparrow racist online post.
During the 2000 State of the Nation address, I quoted a comment which had been made by an engineer who was working in one of our companies, and which comment had been unearthed by FAO, the Food and Agricultural and the Allied Workers Union. And the engineer wrote, and I quote, "I would like to summarize what the Kafirs have done to stuff up this country since they came into power."
Mbeki pulled no punches in his assessment on whether the country has progressed since the dawn of democracy.
However, I believe that perhaps we should answer this question honestly and deal with the consequences of an honest response, however discomforting it may be. Accordingly, I think our answer to the question whether we're making the requisite progress towards achieving the objective of nation building, as we defined it, would be no.
Mbeki says 21 years into the country's democracy, South Africa is just as divided economically as it was in the past, and a bleak outlook for the future if South Africa fails to tackle racism in all its forms.
The longer this situation persists, in spite of the gift of hope delivered to the people by the birth of democracy, the more entrenched will be the conviction that the concept of nation building is a mere mirage and that no basis exists or will ever exist to enable national reconciliation to take place. That's what I said in 1998.
Now, technical problems with the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa's aircraft has prompted him to cancel his visit to Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape, where he was due to address a Human Rights Day rally this morning. Ramaphosa was scheduled to speak at the commemoration of the 31st anniversary of the 1985 Langa massacre in the city. Apartheid police shot and killed more than 20 defenseless activists who were on their way to a funeral. Ramaphosa spokesperson Ronnie Mumwepwa. Well, it seems like we don't have that particular one, that insert there for you. So let's move on to an interview which I was looking forward to. On Human Rights Day today, the Gauteng Premier, David Makhura, is leading an anti-racism march which started a short while ago in Sharpeville in the Vaal. Now, today, it also seems that Gauteng's Deputy Finance Minister, Mcebisi Jonas, in fact, that was last week, he started the run on the Guptas after claiming that he was offered the post of the finance portfolio last December. Former Cabinet Minister Barbara Hogan has since then also revealed that she was invited to a meeting with the Guptas to discuss their possible involvement with air routes to India. And in the Sunday papers yesterday, a former top aide recounted how he was instructed by the president to assist the Guptas. Now, social commentator Dr. Leonard Martin joins us now in studio to look at the week that passed and some of the major stories that unfolded during the week and how it impacted on our society. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to the viewers.
Now, as we celebrate Human Rights Day today, it's a glorious day. Are we doing as a society enough to sort of enjoy and cherish this hard-fought victory that we had 22 years into our democracy?
I think so, Elvis. I think what's being accentuated as we talk about democracy and the stability of our democracy, likewise, human rights is a work in progress. There's no time frame, there's no time limit. But I think what is being accentuated as well is that we need to focus on our communities throughout the country. Human rights needs to be internalized as we have breakfast or lunch or dinner. That is part and parcel of the fabric of our people, of our communities, of individuals.
22 years into this democracy, former President Thabo Mbeki says that racism, though, is a key problem even with human rights. And that 22 years into this democracy, there's still a problem and it needs to be called a national emergency, that is racism. What do you make of that statement?
Absolutely. I think, again, there's an emphasis on the importance of ridding our society of racism. However, let us also understand that these are deep-going social, economic issues. Racism is fundamentally, as we've experienced in the liberation struggle, a relational issue. These are issues that need to be paid attention to on a day-to-day, hourly basis to rhythm in our institutions and in our society.
Now, we heard the phrases this past week of state capture. There was the Gupta Gate saga. They also call it Guptology. What do you make of all of this, and where do we stand as a society when it comes to state capture for anybody else, for that matter?
I'm a bit wary of the notion of state capture. Some of the major historical and social issues that our people have fought for are still being addressed. So whichever way we look, these are distracting forms of language, events, developments. The key focus of national interest and the interest of the majority of our people is transformation, and transformation is a constant work in progress. I doubt very much that anything will succeed within the context of what is referred to as state capture.
Should we be worried that state capture or even Guptatology has been made the narrative or the national narrative of our particular society?
If we look comparatively at what we still have to achieve as a society, these are distractions. And I have no doubt, in terms of the strength of our democracy, which is resident in our people, that these are distractions that will be dealt with in the context of our Constitution and in the context of the exercise of our democratic rights.
Now, the NEC meeting this weekend of the ANC was supposed to deal with a fragile economy. We've also seen a rate hike earlier this last week as well, and the fracas that erupted around the president and his association with the Guptas. Is there a sense, though, that the ANC is willing to deal with these issues in an election year?
From what we've seen, Elvis, the ANC is extremely sensitive to what is developing, and I'm almost certain that the key strategists in the ANC would have their eye on the election in terms of assuring our people that these distractions such as the Gupta scandal and other terminologies which are now emerging should not be a distraction in terms of completing the historical journey that our people are on, the historical journey that the ANC is on in terms of meeting those demands that have been fought for.
Then there's also the small matter of the finance minister and SARS, as well as the NPA, in a matter of 27 questions to be answered. The minister will now finally answer those questions, but what can we read into all of this?
Always my view is that these are serious issues, but in the greater scheme of things, these are distractions, compared to what our society still has to consolidate and confirm in the form of transformation. Of course, the economy is at the center of everything, but I'm almost certain these matters will be dealt with if we look at the challenges facing the majority of our people.
Anything else, Doctor, that stood out for you in this week that passed?
Well, I think what is of significance is that there's a greater focus on the impact the economy is having on our people, the increase in the price of basic commodities, and of course the quality of life. These are issues that we need to keep our eye on. We should not take our eye off the ball, because the issue of quality of life definitely will have an impact on how we view the outcome of the elections.
Doctor, as usual, thank you so much for your time and joining us in the studio.
Thomas.
That was Dr. Leonard Martin. He's a social commentator telling us about the week that passed. And we looked really at the slots, at this particular slot, of the major stories that unfolded during the week and how it impacts on you and me as a society in this country. Now, we'll take a short break, but after that, Kendall Makhamate will be back with your sports news.
Our eyes are the window to the beautiful wonders of the world, but blindness enhances other senses. Technology has made living with blindness easy.
If you look on the side here, it's got like grooves in there. Yeah. So the first one after when it comes together will be 20 Rand, 50 Rand. And if I slide this in, I can see according to the grooves, it's now on 50 Rand.
To Steve Kekana, blindness was never a hindrance, but a blessing.
You got to know that you are the child of the universe, being blind, and you've got the right to be here.
Join your host, Dr. Sello Mutawun, every Saturday from 9 a.m.
I'm Peter Ndoro. And I'm production Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and Hauser Bush Imbev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful. Have you ever considered skin bleaching?
Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom, time being 11:41. Now, third-place Platinum Stars closed the gap between themselves and second-place Bidvest Wits when they beat Mpumalanga Black Aces 1-0 on the weekend. Meanwhile, relegation-threatened Maritzburg United gained a valuable point away from home when they drew 2-2 with Chippa United in Port Elizabeth.
United had a dream start, scoring inside the first 10 minutes through Pilani Zulu.
Square ball opportunity, perhaps goes instead himself.
But it did not take long for Andile Mbenyani to equalize for the home side. Then Joseph Malongwani put United in the lead 5 minutes before the break. United got the much-needed equalizer just before the break through Evans Rusike.
Oh, it's been very kind for Maritzburg United.
Aces and Bafana keeper Jackson Mabokwani kept his side in the match with this brilliant save. But Indumiso Mabena broke the deadlock, scoring his 7th goal for the Kwena this season, 22 minutes from time. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
And just to help you remember, here's a quick summary of the results from the weekend's action in the ABSA Premiership. Starting from I believe it was Friday that the first match was played, or Sunday. And when it does come up, there we go. Golden Arrows are 3-0 losing to Super Sport United in Chatsworth, KwaZulu-Natal. Goble Park was where Free State Stars and Polokwane City were 1-1. Then yesterday's results, a 1-0 win for Platinum Stars, Chipa United, 2-2 draw with Maritzburg United. We go through to the log standings. We start at the top of the log. You'll see that not a lot has changed with the log standings at top of the log. The main change really being Chipa United, Orlando Pirates swapping places, as well as at the top three, you see they're separated by no less than 9 points, 52, 48, 43 between Mamelodi Sundowns, Wits and Platinum Stars. Bottom half of the log, not much else has changed there. Bottom half of the log, Super Sport United and Golden Arrows swapping places. University of Pretoria and Maritzburg United still at the bottom of the log. Carrying on with other sporting stories, two of the remaining South African sides have bombed out of the CAF inter-club competitions. Kaizer Chiefs and Bidvest Wits are out of the CAF Champions League and the Confederations Cup respectively. Chiefs failed to score in a must-win match against ASEC Mimosas in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, in a match that ended goalless. Amakosi had to reverse a 1-0 defeat that suffered a week ago against ASEC in the first round of the CAF Champions League. Meanwhile, Bidvest Wits lost 4-3 away to Azam FC of Tanzania in the first round of the CAF Confederations Cup. Wits lost to Azam 7-3 on aggregate. Many did not give the students a chance to bounce back after they'd suffered a 3-0 defeat at home a week ago. Mamelodi Sundowns in the Champions League are the only surviving South African club. Now to cycling news, where Germany's Karl Platt won the Absa Cape Epic for a 5th time, joining legendary mountain biker Christoph Sauser as the only two riders to have ever achieved that feat. Platt, together with Bull's teammate Urs Huber of Switzerland, won the 2016 Epic by 13 minutes and 8 seconds, having led the race from the prologue.
Platt and Huber had built up a sizable time advantage and so could afford to just keep an eye on rival teams on stage 7. Germany's Manuel Fumic and Henrique Avancini of Brazil, riding for Cannondale Factory Racing, took the stage, finishing at the Mirandal Wine Estate. But it was Platt and Huber, finishing in 5th place for the stage, who stole the show. They dominated the epic from the prologue, picking up 3 stage wins along the way. It is Huber's first epic win, but for Platt, who won the inaugural epic in 2004, it was particularly sweet, as he joined Switzerland's Christoph Sauser as the only 2 riders to win the race, often referred to as the Tour de France of mountain biking 5 times.
It was a dream to win it 5 times. And we already surprised ourselves on the prologue that we won the prologue, and yeah, everything just went perfect. It was, yeah, it's unbelievable. I have no words. I can't tell you how happy I am.
Sport for Good Sabine Spitz of Germany and Ukrainian Yana Belomina won their 3rd stage in the women's race, taking stage 7, while Denmark's Annika Langfall and Ariane Kleinans of Switzerland, riding for the Spur Specialized team, came in 2nd to claim a 3rd epic win in a row for the pair by 14 minutes and 56 seconds.
Every single time, and it's been so different. We've been really challenged quite well this year, so I must say I'm more than satisfied to actually take home the jerseys, and yeah, really excited because we had some stiff competition.
The South African team of Darren Lill and Waylon Woolcock acclaimed the ABSA African Red jerseys as the top continental riders.
Now in the world of golf, where Jason Day clinched a 1-stroke victory at the Arnold Palmer Invitational in Florida for his 5th victory in his past 12 starts on the PGA Tour. The win, which is the Australian's 8th on the tour, sees him rise from 3rd to 2nd in the world rankings. Day ran up 3 bogeys in the first 6 holes to open the door to his rivals. It then became a 3-man race late in the round between Day, Kevin Chappell and American Troy Merritt. Chappell had the lead with 1 hole left, but dropped a shot at the par 4 18th. That opened the door for Day, who also pushed his drive at the last but drew a decent lie and was able to clear the pond in front of the green and advance his ball into a bunker. Merritt, meanwhile, could have forced a playoff with a birdie at the last, but instead ran up a double bogey and tied for 3rd with Swede Henrik Stenson. They finished at 17 under par, 271, while American Kevin Chappell claimed 2nd place on 16 under after bogeying the last. And South Africa beat Afghanistan by 37 runs in the World 2020 Group 1 game in Mumbai, India. The Proteas, who won the toss and chose to bat first, put up 209 runs on the scoreboard. It proved too much for a gutsy Afghanistan, who were bowled out for 172 in 20 overs.
Quinton de Kock once again played his role as opening batsman to perfection. And although he lost his partner Hashim Amla early in the innings, he kept the scoreboard busy. After Amla left, scoring 5, de Kock and captain Faf du Plessis scored 65 runs for the second wicket. Du Plessis was, however, caught napping when he got run out for 41 from 27 balls, while de Kock soon joined him in the dressing room, scoring 45 from 51 deliveries. AB de Villiers and JP Dumnie carried on the good work with a 76-run stand. But despite solid batting, it initially looked like the Proteas might not go past the 200-run mark. That all changed in the 17th over when de Villiers hit Rashid Khan for 29 runs from just 6 balls, which included 4 sixes. De Villiers departed soon after that for 64 from just 29 balls. Dumnie and David Miller helped their team to 209 as Miller scored 19 from 8 balls and Dumnie finished unbeaten on 29. But the Protea bowlers once again struggled in the opening power play. Mohammad Shahzad punished all the bowlers he faced, scoring 44 runs from just 19 balls. After just 3 overs, Afghanistan had 47 runs on the board before Chris Morris took the ball. He's been under pressure after a poor performance against England, but redeemed himself somewhat by bowling Shahzad. Morris got another wicket in his next over, but Afghanistan managed to keep their run rate going despite that. They reached 140 for 4, and the tide turned in the Proteas' favour when Imran Tahir got rid of Muhammad Nabi. After that, wickets fell on a regular basis and Morris was named man of the match, taking 4 wickets for 27 runs. And although the Proteas will have to work on their bowling early on, the amount of extras they conceded was much better than in the game against England. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
And that's exactly where we leave it with the sports. We'll now take you live to the main Human Rights Day commemorations in Durban at the Moses Mabhida Stadium, where William Walker is standing by.